The rider brought no banner and wore no sigil on his cloak, only road dirt and frost. He had arrived after sunset, slipping through Winterfell's gates like a stray dog, and by rights Eddard Stark should have sent him to the guest house and the chest he guarded to the vaults until morning. But something in the man's eyes, fevered, desperate, and yet oddly relieved to see the grey dire wolf of Stark, had pricked at the Lord of Winterfell's caution. Now the chest sat before him in the courtyard, its iron bands rimed with ice, its wood swollen from sea spray and hard travel. The air smelled of horses and smoke, of the familiar tang of Winterfell's hot springs rising through the stones. Snow fell in fine, thin flakes, barely more than salt on his hair and shoulders. "Again," Eddard Stark said quietly. "Tell Maester Luwin what you told me." The rider's teeth chattered. He could not have seen 40. His hair was thinning on top and lank with grease, his beard in need of a trimming. "My lord, the ship put in at White Harbor 3 days past. The chest was to go south to King's Landing, for Lord Varys the Spider, but the captain, he feared pirates off Sisterton, so he put in early. There was a letter for you." The letter lay folded in Eddard Stark's gloved hand, the purple wax seal already broken. The flowing, alien script still seemed to writhe when he looked at it. He did not trust the words, nor the hand that had penned them, but he knew the truth when he saw it, even buried in flattery and perfume. From across the narrow sea, from Illyrio Mopatus of Pentos, merchant prince and friend to exiled kings. A gift for Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North. 3 curios from the ashes of dead Valyria, relics once promised to Viserys Targaryen and his sister Daenerys. 3 stones hard as iron, with the memory of dragons locked within. "Curios," Maester Luwin murmured now, adjusting the chain at his throat as he squinted at the chest. "Trinkets for collectors. Associ traders will say anything to fatten a purse, my lord." "Perhaps." Eddard Stark's breath smoked white in the chill air. Behind them, the keep's high windows glowed with firelight. Somewhere within, his children slept. Caitlin Stark would be in their bedchamber, hair unbound, waiting for him. And perhaps not. "You do not trust the sender." Maester Luwin's voice was gentle, but the statement held no question. "I do not know the sender," Ned said. "That is enough." He stepped closer, laying his hand flat on the lid. The chest was cold as the stones beneath his boots. He could feel the tremor of the boards when the rider shifted his weight, could hear the faint whicker of horses in the stables, the whine of the wind around the first keep. For a heartbeat, he thought he heard something else as well. A slow, hollow thud beneath his palm, like a distant drum. Nonsense, he told himself. Old man's fancies. He had not yet seen 40, but the burdens of the last years weighed upon him as heavily as any harvest of winters. Jon Arryn's death, the news from King's Landing, the summons from his old friend on the Iron Throne. Robert had written with his own hand, blotted ink and all, "Come south and help me rule. I am surrounded by liars and flatterers. I need you, Ned." And then, as if on Robert Baratheon's heels, this, "Open it," Ned said. The guards needed a crowbar to pry the lid free. Rust screamed briefly, then gave way with an ugly crack. The hinges spat splinters. Luwin peered over the edge, his breath hitching in a small, unmasterly sound. They were larger than Ned had expected. Each was the size of a man's helmet, cradled in straw and scented cloth that had once smelled of lavender or myrrh and now reeked of salt and mildew. They were stone, yes, but no stone he knew. One was deep black veined with scarlet like frozen lightning. Another was pale as bone with fine ridges of gold. The third was a dark, mottled green with a faint sheen like old bronze. "Dragon eggs?" Luwin whispered, the words tumbling out before he mastered them. "7 save us." The phrase carried no real faith, or none that Ned could hear. Maester Luwin had been trained in the Citadel, where men prided themselves on reason and scoffed at wildling tales. Yet even he could not deny what lay before them. "Stone," Ned said again, more to himself than anyone. "If they ever were eggs, they are long dead." He reached down and closed his bare hand around the green one. It was heavy, and the surface was smoother than it looked, the scales worn by time and touching hands. For an instant, as his fingers curled around it, he felt a whisper of warmth against his skin. He tightened his grip, testing, waiting for the illusion to pass. It did not. If anything, it deepened. "Your hand, my lord," Luwin said sharply. "You are bleeding." Ned blinked and looked down. A thin line of red had opened across the base of his thumb where a scale's edge had bitten him. The blood gleamed darkly in the torchlight before the cold air stiffened it. The egg in his palm felt no heavier, but the sense of weight had changed. It was as if something within had shifted, seeking. He set it down among its siblings with a care that surprised him. "Send the rider to the kitchens," Ned said, closing the lid himself this time. He did not bother with the broken latch. "He will have a hot meal and a bed tonight and coin in the morning. After that, if he is wise, he will forget he ever came to Winterfell." "And the chest?" Maester Luwin asked. Eddard Stark looked past him to the looming mass of Winterfell's great tower, the godswood beyond, and the dark line of the hill that concealed the oldest part of his home. He thought of Lyanna Stark's statue below that hill, her stone face pale in the candlelight, her stone hands folded over her stone roses. "Promise me, Ned." He had promised her many things on that bed of blood and flowers. He had kept only one. "The chest goes below," he said at last. "Into the crypts. No word of this to anyone. Not to my wife. Not to my children. Not to anyone." Luwin hesitated only a heartbeat. Then he bowed his head. "As you command, my lord." When the guards took up the chest again, Ned walked beside them, one gloved hand resting on the lid. He told himself it was to steady the load on the uneven stones. He did not admit, even in the privacy of his own mind, that it was because he wanted to feel one last time if that faint warmth against his palm had been real. The stairs into the crypts were worn with centuries of feet, the hollows in the center of each step polished by ghosts. Ned could have walked them blind. He had run down them as a boy with Brandon at his heels, had crept down as a squire to light a candle for his grandfather after the Mad King's fire, had descended last with his father's bones in the wagon behind him and half the north come to see their lord laid among the kings of winter. Now he came with only 2 guards, Maester Luwin, and a chest that seemed to grow heavier the farther they carried it. The air changed as they went below. The bite of surface winter gave way to the slow, damp warmth that seeped up from the hot springs beneath Winterfell, thick with the smell of stone and old dust and something else. Moss, perhaps, or the faint metallic tang of rusted swords. Their torches spat and hissed, dripping little rivers of pitch. The statues watched him. They always did. Row on row of long stone faces, the lords of Winterfell stretching back into the dark, each with a direwolf at his feet and an iron sword laid across his lap. His father's likeness gazed out with its familiar, stern eyes. Brandon's niche remained empty, a void between father and son. Beyond them lay Lyanna's place, further than any of them should have ever had to go. He could not help glancing toward it as they turned down the lowest passage. The flicker of torchlight brushed over her stone features, softening the sharpness of her cheekbones. Someone had freshened the roses at her feet. Their petals, now dry and brittle, were still faintly blue. Ned's throat tightened. "Promise me, Ned." He had promised to keep her son safe, to raise him as his own, to tell no one. The guards shifted the chest down the last few steps, grunting. "Here, my lord?" one asked. He was an umberman, broad in the shoulder and thick through the chest, more accustomed to hauling kegs than dragon relics from Essos. "Further," Ned said, "to Lyanna." Maester Luwin made a soft sound, but he said nothing. Perhaps he guessed, perhaps not. The Citadel taught many things, but not all secrets were written in books. They set the chest before Lyanna's statue. Her stone eyes seemed to follow Ned as he knelt, brushing the dust from the base of the plinth. The floor was warm through his breeches. He had played here as a child, hiding from Septa Mordain and his lessons, feeling the heat seep up into his bones on winter days. The warmth had always comforted him then. Now it felt vaguely like a warning. "This place is not suited for books or parchment," Luwin murmured, tugging at his chain. "The damp. These are stone," Ned said. "They will not rot, and no one comes here without my leave. No one save his children and their curiosities." He thought of Arya slipping in to talk to the dead, of Sansa kneeling properly before their grandfather's statue with Septa Mordane hovering behind, of Bran and Rickon darting between the stone wolves, of Jon Snow standing with awkward hands at his sides, never quite sure whether he was permitted to pray to the same ancestors. He could not think about that now. "Help me," he said. Together they eased the chest open and lifted the eggs out one by one. Without the reek of the straw and the sea-soaked cloth, they seemed somehow more themselves. The black egg swallowed the torchlight like a night sky devouring stars. The pale one gleamed faintly as though under a thin layer of frost. The green drew his eyes and would not let them go. "Valyrian work," Luwin said under his breath. "Or some master very like them." "We will say they are river stones," Ned answered. "Or traders' baubles. Or nothing at all. We will not speak of them." Even as he said it, he knew silence would not be enough. Secrets in Winterfell had a way of seeping into the very stone. He set the black egg first, nestling it at the base of Lyanna's plinth where the heat from the springs was strongest. The pale egg went beside it, scales clicking softly as they settled. When he took up the green, a faint current of warmth slid up his arms, despite the leather of his gloves. The cut on his thumb throbbed. "You think these are dangerous," Luwin said quietly. "I think we live in dangerous times," Eddard Stark replied. "I think a stag sits uneasy on a melted throne of swords, and a lioness whispers in his ear, and somewhere across the sea a boy dreams of dragons and crowns. I think—" He paused, tasting the words before he let them fall. "I think power like this is never given freely, only lent, and always at a price." He laid the green egg down between its siblings. For an instant, the air seemed to thicken, the warmth boiling up around Lyanna's statue until sweat beaded at his hairline. Then it passed as swiftly as a sigh. "Stone," Maester Luwin said, as if to reassure himself. "They are only stone. Then they will sleep like the rest." Ned rose, joints creaking more than he liked. He nodded to the guards. "Close the chest, but leave it unlatched. No one is to move it. No one is to come here without my command. If anyone asks, it is old records from the south, nothing more." They obeyed. The torches hissed as they turned back toward the stairs. Ned lingered a heartbeat longer, looking up into Lyanna's stone eyes. "I will keep him safe," he murmured, so softly that even Luwin did not hear. "I swear it. Your boy and mine, both of them, for as long as I live." The Crypts gave him no answer but their slow, lowering silence. When he turned away, the heat at his back seemed to follow him up the stairs. The sound of steel on steel was a comfort to Jon Snow. In it there was no doubt, no whispers, no glances that slid away as he approached. A sword came down or it did not. You blocked or you bled. The truth was in the bruises that blossomed along his ribs and arms, in the sting of wooden swords across his knuckles. "Your guard's too high," Robb Stark grunted, pressing in. Their blades locked, a cross of worn practiced steel between them. "You'll lose a hand that way. Not if I take yours first." Jon twisted, slid aside, and brought his blade down in a stroke that might have split Robb's helm if Ser Roderick Castle had not barked enough. At that very moment, Robb stepped back, grinning through his sweat. They were near enough in height now that Jon did not have to crane his neck to look his half-brother in the eye. The realization stung more than any blow. He was growing, but every inch seemed to drag him further from boyhood and closer to a future he did not want. "No killing your liege lord in the practice yard," Theon Greyjoy called from the rail, laughter in his words. "Save it for the Southron Knights. I hear they scream prettier." Jon shot him a look and felt his own mouth tug at a reluctant smile. "You scream prettiest of all, Theon. Ask the girls in the kitchens." Ser Roderick snorted. "If the pair of you spent half as much time with your footwork as you do with your tongues, I might have one decent swordsman between you. Again. And you, he jabbed his blunted sword in Jon's direction. Watch your left. You're favoring it like a crone with a bad hip. Jon's left did ache, but he said nothing. He fell back into stance, blade up, and watched Robb's feet the way Ser Rodrik had taught them. The yard was half-frozen mud, the sky a flat sheet of gray, but the exercise kept his blood warm despite the bite in the air. Somewhere beyond the yard walls, he could hear the distant rush of water through the hot springs and the faint bell of a smith's hammer. Above them, on the stone balcony outside the great hall, Caitlin Stark watched with her cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. Jon did not have to look up to know. He could feel her gaze like a hand on the back of his neck. She watched Robb as a mother watched her son. She watched Jon like a man watched a storm building on the horizon. Warily, with a faint, pinched resentment, as if any day now the thunder might decide to strike her house and he would be helpless to stop it. He had long since ceased hoping for more. Ghost moved along the edge of the yard, a pale shadow against the dark stone. The direwolf's red eyes tracked their every movement, ears pricked. When Jon slipped on a patch of frost-slick mud and Robb's practiced sword thumped against his shoulder, Ghost gave a low, disapproving growl. "I know," Jon muttered, rubbing the sore spot as they broke apart. "My left. I heard." Robb laughed. "Ghost thinks you're growing soft. Perhaps I should keep you here after I ride south, just to make certain you keep practicing." The words, tossed off lightly, landed like stones. Jon's smile vanished. "You ride south," he said. "I ride north." It had been settled for months. When Eddard Stark went to King's Landing to serve as hand, Robb would remain as his father's heir, while Jon took the Black with Uncle Benjen at the wall. The Night's Watch would be his house, the ancient, crumbling fortresses his inheritance. No bride, no sons, no lands but the frozen wilderness. A bastard's portion. Except Uncle Benjen had not come back from his ranging. And the raven from King's Landing had spoken not of honor and duty and the hand of the king, but of suspicion and whispers, of trouble festering in the south like rot under a nail. Another raven had followed, and another. King Robert Baratheon himself had ridden out to hunt and returned to his bed with boar's blood in his belly. Eddard Stark had written of plots and poisons, of lions and stags snarling over the corpse of the crown. The last raven had carried no words from Ned. Only the seal of the hand, cracked and broken, and a terse message from a city watchman Jon had never heard of, bearing the stink of desperation. Lord Eddard Stark arrested for treason. Trial to come. That had been 3 days ago. Winterfell felt different in those 3 days. The air was the same smells, the same people, but the weight of it had shifted. The servants spoke in careful voices. The guards lingered longer at the walls. Sansa Stark wept more than she smiled. Arya Stark vanished for hours at a time. Bran Stark lay in his bed and stared at the rafters. Rickon Stark clung to Robb's leg whenever he could find him, as if afraid his brother might vanish if he let go. And Jon Snow found it hard to breathe. "I know what was meant to happen," Robb said now, his face sobering. "But what is meant and what is wise are not always the same. Your sword would not go amiss in the south." "Nor Uncle Benjen's at the wall," Jon replied. "The Night's Watch still needs men, does it?" A small, traitorous voice inside him whispered. "Or do you just need somewhere to go?" Ser Rodrik clapped his hands, scattering the dark thoughts. "Enough jawing. Again. And mind your bloody feet." They fought until their arms shook and their legs trembled. When at last Ser Rodrik called a halt and sent them to drink, the gray light of afternoon had already begun its slow, fading slide into dusk. As Jon crossed the yard, cup in hand, Ghost fell into step beside him. The direwolf's fur brushed his leg like cold smoke. Jon sank his fingers into that thick pelt, seeking comfort without admitting it even to himself. He had barely taken a sip when Ghost stiffened. The direwolf's head turned toward the main gate, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. A heartbeat later, the horns sounded from the walls. "Raven," one of the guards shouted. "From the south." Robb's cup slipped from his fingers, splashing water into the mud. He didn't seem to nod. Jon felt his own breath catch. They looked at one another. Then they were both running, boots pounding up the stone steps toward the maester's tower, ghost a white blur ahead of them. The hall seemed too small for the news it had to hold. Smoke from the great fire curled up to the rafters. Shadows of antlers and banners danced across the stone. The carved direwolves above the high seat glared down as if they, too, disapproved. Caitlin Stark stood near the hearth, fingertips pressed against her lips, her face as pale as the frost clinging to the courtyard stones. Sansa stood beside her, one hand clutching the heavy skirts of her mother's gown, the other knotted in a kerchief already damp with tears. Arya lurked half behind a pillar, hair escaping its braid, eyes too big in her thin face. Bran sat in a wheeled chair that Maester Luwin had contrived for him, stiff as carved wood, while Rickon perched on Robb's hip, his small arms wrapped tight around his brother's neck. Jon Snow stood just outside the circle of family, ghost at his heel. That was where he belonged. He knew it as well as he knew the feel of his own sword hilt. Still, the distance stung. Maester Luwin's hands shook more than usual as he unfurled the parchment. The raven sat on his shoulder, feathers puffed up, black eyes bead bright. Wax had dripped down the ribbon in a crooked line, as if the seal had been set in haste. "It is from Lord Varys," Luwin said, puzzling out the cramped, almost delicate script. "The Master of Whisperers." Robb's jaw tightened. "Read it," Luwin swallowed. "It says, Lord Robb Stark, by the time this reaches you, events in King's Landing may have run their course beyond any man's command. I write in haste and at great personal risk. Your father, Lord Eddard Stark, Hand of the King, was accused of treason by Queen Cersei Lannister and Lord Peter Baelish. He demanded a public trial. Instead, the boy king Joffrey Baratheon ordered his immediate execution. The words hung in the smoky air like a blow yet to land. Sansa made a small, strangled sound and crumpled to her knees. Caitlin did not move. Her hand slid from her mouth to press flat against her chest, as if to hold something in. Arya stepped out from behind the pillar. "No," she said. Her voice was very calm. "No, you're wrong. Father can't be dead. You must have read it wrong." Maester Luwin blinked rapidly behind the sheen in his own eyes. "Child, read it again," Arya said. "Read it again and read it right this time." "There is no mistake," Luwin murmured. "I am so sorry, my lady, my lord, all of you. Lord Eddard Stark was executed on the steps of the Great September of Baelor. Beheaded." Sansa was sobbing now, great gasping sobs that shook her thin shoulders. Rickon began to cry in earnest, not understanding but reacting to the sound. Bran stared at the fire as if he could see through it to some other place. Arya's face crumpled, the calm shattering like thin ice under a boot. Robb's breath came harsh and fast. Jon could see him fighting for control, could almost feel the struggle in his own chest. They were not boys in the yard now. They were two young men standing on the edge of a cliff they could not yet see the bottom of. Caitlin turned, slowly, as if part of her had turned to stone. Her gaze found Jon almost at once. It always did. In that moment, she did not look like a lady, nor like the dutiful southern wife he had always known her as. She looked like a woman whose world had been taken from her by force. "This is their doing," she whispered. "The Lannisters, the Queen, all of them." Her voice sharpened, like a blade honed against a whetstone. "They killed my husband. They killed your father, Robb." "They killed my father," Robb said hoarsely. The words seemed to surprise him as they left his mouth, as if putting them into the air made them more real. "They killed Father." Jon had said nothing. He could not. The words would not come. Inside, everything felt hollowed out, scraped clean, as if some great white wind were roaring through his chest, leaving only emptiness behind. Eddard Stark, who had given him a name and a home when he had no right to either. Eddard Stark, with his quiet voice and sad eyes, his rare smiles and his rarer laughter. Eddard Stark, who had never told him who his mother was, but who had placed his hand on Jon's shoulder every time some lord looked at him askance and said, "This is my blood," dead, half a world away, on the orders of a boy King Jon had never seen. He wanted to scream. He wanted to ride south that very instant, to hack his way through guards and gold cloaks and anyone who stood between him and the steps of the Great September, if only to stand where his father had stood in his last moments. Instead, he stood in the hall of Winterfell and could only watch the people he loved break. "We march," Robb said. The words came from somewhere deep in him, stripped of all softness. He shifted Rickon to his father's old chair and squared his shoulders as if the weight of the North were already settling there. "We call the banners. We march south. We make them pay." "You are but a boy," Cailin whispered. "You are gods, you are all boys." Robb think. The Lannisters have the king. They have the throne. They have the gold of Casterly Rock, the swords of the south. They do not have the north, Robb said. They do not have our oaths or our wolves or... He faltered, glancing at Jon as if seeking words he could not yet shape. "They do not have us." Jon's heart lurched, as if someone had reached into his chest and taken it in their hand. "Not me, not them. We will talk of marches and banners later," Maester Luwin said thickly. "Forgive me, my lord, but there are other matters to consider. Little Lord Bran, young Rickon, the Lady Sansa still in King's Landing. The wall." His eyes went to Jon. The look held sympathy, yes, but also a reminder of old plans, old promises. "My place is at the wall," Jon thought dully. "That was decided long ago. Father wished it. Uncle Benjen expected it. I am a Snow, not a Stark. Bastards in the south take the name Rivers. Bastards in North take the black." A piece of him rebelled at the thought. The wall was far away, a cold line on the edge of every map. He had dreamed of it as a boy, of the glory of the Night's Watch, the brave men in black holding back the darkness. Lately his dreams had tasted more of ash. Ghost nosed at his hand. Jon knelt, burying his fingers in the direwolf's fur, grounding himself in the feel of it, the heat of the living creature pressed against him. Robb sank to his knees beside Rickon, pulling his brothers close. Cailin went to them at last, gathering Bran and Rickon both under her arms, her grief spilling over in great, racking sobs. No one reached for Jon. No one thought to. He understood. He had always understood. Understanding did nothing to ease the sharp, cutting line of pain that ran from his throat to his belly. He could not stay in the hall. Not with their sobs and whispers and Luwin's quavering voice trying to shape the future from the ruins of the present. Not with the carved direwolves staring down impassively, as if to say this is the cost of oaths. He rose without a word and slipped out a side door into the cold. The night bit deeper now that he carried the news inside him. Jon scarcely felt it. The courtyard lay mostly empty. The small folk had crept away to whisper the news in their own corners, to light their own candles for the dead Lord of Winterfell. A stable boy darted past with a pail, eyes downcast, as if afraid that merely meeting Jon's gaze might draw him into the orbit of the Stark family's grief. Ghost moved silent as breath at his side. The direwolf's paws left faint prints on the snow that filled as quickly as they appeared. His red eyes glimmered in the half-light. Jon walked without purpose until the walls and towers and smoking chimneys blurred around him, the familiar angles stripped of their comfort. His boots took him past the forge, where no hammer rang tonight, past the glass gardens where limp cabbages sagged under frost, past the Godswood Gate where the heart tree waited with its red, knowing eyes. He did not turn into the Godswood. He had knelt there often enough, eyes closed, trying to hear some whisper of guidance in the rustle of leaves. The only voice he heard tonight was his father's, and even that was memory, thin as worn parchment. "You may not have my name, but you have my blood. It should have been enough. It had been once." Now it felt like a stone in his chest. His feet found the steps to the crypts before he consciously chose them. The entrance yawned dark and cold, though he knew warmth lay below. Death, he thought as he took the first step. "I run to the dead. when the living have no place for me." Ghost hesitated at the threshold, hackles prickling, then followed. The air grew heavier as they descended. Jon took a torch from the bracket just inside the door and lit it from the ever-burning brazier. Flame flared, throwing long shadows ahead of him. The smell of smoke and old stone and something else, mineral and hot, like the breath of the earth, met him like an old, uneasy friend. He moved past the first ranks of the dead Starks, their stone faces solemn in the flickering light. He paused briefly at his grandfather's statue, then at Eddard Stark's father, feeling the weight of those carved gazes. These men had died with swords in their hands, in battle or in fire. His father had died on a scaffold in a southern city, his honor twisted into a rope to hang him. Jon clenched his jaw and kept walking. He found Lyanna Stark's statue as he always did, as if something in the blood between them drew him there. She looked younger than the others, her stone features delicate, her hair pulled back with simple grace. The sculptor had given her eyes that distant, dreaming look the singers loved to attribute to tragic maidens. Jon had never known her, but sometimes, in his more fanciful moments, he imagined that if he'd had a mother, she might have looked at him as Lyanna's statue looked at the darkness. He sank to his knees before her, the torch wedged between two flagstones so its light spilled up across her face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though he did not know to whom he spoke. To Lyanna Stark, who had lost her life in a war she had never chosen. To Eddard Stark, who had lost his for a crown he had never wanted. To himself, for being too weak to bear their legacy. Ghost circled uneasily, nails clicking softly on the warm stone. The direwolf's nose twitched. He snarled, low in his throat, teeth bared at something Jon could not see. "What is it?" Jon asked, frowning. He rose, hand dropping to the hilt of his sword out of habit. The crypts were quiet but for the distant drip of water and the faint, constant susurration of the springs. Yet Ghost's fur stood straight, his body a taut line of alarm. The dire wolf padded toward the base of Lyanna's statue, then to the stone plinth beside it where there should have been nothing but dust and age. He sniffed at the shadows and gave a sharp, disbelieving whine. Jon took the torch up again and stepped closer. At first he saw nothing unusual. Stone floor, stone base, the faint sheen of damp where the heat from below kissed the chill from above. Then his eye caught on a line that had not been there before, or if it had, he had never noticed it. A hairline crack ran across the flagstones at the statue's feet, as if the earth below had shifted minutely, pushing up. Heat pulsed faintly from that line, like breath through parted lips. Jon crouched and held out his hand. The warmth brushed his skin, startling after the cold of the courtyard. It made his palm prickle. He swallowed, suddenly aware of how alone he was down here. Alone save for his wolf and 1,000 dead Starks. He should call for Maester Luwin. He should fetch Robb. He should turn and walk back up the steps and tell himself that the warmth was only his imagination, that grief had driven him to see portents where there were none. Instead, he set the torch aside, braced his hands on the edge of the plinth, and heaved. The stone slab shifted with a grinding groan, far heavier than its size suggested. Jon's muscles burned. Ghost snarled encouragement, pacing. With one last, desperate heave, Jon dragged the slab aside far enough to reveal the hollow beneath. Heat rolled up like the exhalation of some sleeping thing disturbed. Jon flinched, raising an arm to shield his face. Sweat sprang instantly along his brow. The air shimmered. Within the hollow lay 3 shapes. They were dull in the half-light, yet they pulled his gaze as surely as a lodestone pulls a needle. One black as midnight, one pale as old bone, and one a deep, mottled green that glimmered as the torchlight licked across it. Jon reached out, drawn, his fingers closing around the green stone before sense could stop him. It was hot, not merely warm, like a stone left in the sun, but hot like a stove brick, like coals banked beneath ash. Pain flared in his palm. He gasped, tried to let go, but his grip spasmed instead, tightening. A bright, sharp line of agony lanced across his hand. When he jerked away at last, panting, blood welled up from a cut along the base of his fingers where the edge of a scale had sliced him. His blood spattered across the green stone, dark drops sizzling where they landed. Ghost howled. The sound of Ghost's howl ricocheted off the stone walls, turning the crypts into a narrow canyon of echoing alarm. Jon staggered back, clutching his bleeding hand. His skin smelled of iron and singed hair. The green stone drank his blood. There was no other word for it. The drops did not roll away or freeze or simply lie where they fell. They seemed to sink, drawn down, even as the surface of the egg shuddered under some hidden strain. The scale ridges flexed minutely, as if muscles lay beneath them, tensing. Heat burst outward in a wave that struck Jon like a blow. The torch guttered, then flared higher, its flame bending toward the egg as if caught in a sudden draft. Sweat rolled down Jon's temples in fat beads. He could barely breathe. 7 hells, he whispered, though the words were torn from him more than chosen. The crack came next. It was not loud, but it cut through the panting of his breath and the distant drip of the springs with cruel clarity. A sharp, splintering sound, like ice breaking on a river. A jagged line appeared along the shell, running from tip to base, glowing faintly red at the edges. Jon stared, his heart pounding so hard it seemed to shake his vision. The egg split. Light spilled out, not the harsh white of lightning or the soft gold of a hearthfire, but a strange, molten glow somewhere between yellow and green. It strobed against the crypt walls, turning the stone kings into momentary giants alive with sickly radiance. The heat intensified until Jon's eyes watered. Ghost whined, every hair standing on end, but he did not flee. He planted himself between Jon and the fissuring stone, lips peeled back to show every tooth he possessed, as if he meant to snarl the world itself into submission. The shell fell away in chunks, scales clattering against the stone like cast-off armor. Within, something moved. It was small at first, smaller than Jon had imagined, smaller than his hand. Limbs curled tight to its body, wings pressed flush against its sides, its head tucked beneath the membranous fold of its own neck. Wetness gleamed on its hide, a mixture of viscous fluid and the molten sheen of cracked stone. Then it inhaled. The sound was thin but deep, impossibly deep, as if that tiny chest drew air from some cavern far below the crypts. The heat ebbed as it did so, sucked inward. When the creature opened its eyes, they burned a fierce, luminous green, slit-pupilled and unblinking. Jon could not move. All the tales old Nan had ever muttered by the kitchen fire rattled through his skull. Of dragon lords with hair like silver and eyes like molten coins, of scaled beasts that ate princes and peasants alike, of a mad king who had cried burn them all and meant it. This was no story. It was alive, there in front of him under Winterfell at his feet. The creature shook itself, flinging off fragments of shell and clinging fluid. Its wings unfurled in a ragged, twitching stretch, translucent membranes catching the torchlight. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like stained glass fashioned from emeralds and bone. It fixed him with its gaze. Jon's cut hand throbbed. He realized he was still bleeding, dark drops pattering onto the stone. The tiny dragon, there was no other word for it, stretched its neck toward him. Its nostrils flared, sampling the air. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of needle-fine teeth. "Easy," Jon said hoarsely, though he had no idea whether it could hear him, let alone understand. "Easy now." It darted forward with shocking speed. Ghost lunged, jaws snapping. Jon cried out, but the dire wolf checked himself at the last instant. Lips skinned back in a snarl that would have sent any dog or man fleeing. The dragon hissed, a sound like water on hot coals, and flared its wings in answer. Heat pulsed outward again, less all-consuming this time, but intense enough that Jon felt the hair on his forearms crisp. For a heartbeat, man, wolf, and dragon wavered on the edge of violence. "Ghost," Jon said, forcing steadiness into his voice. "Back." The dire wolf flicked a red eye toward him. For an instant, Jon was certain Ghost would ignore him, driven by some deeper instinct. Then the wolf huffed and took a single reluctant step back, hackles still bristling, muscles tense. The dragon, emboldened, crept forward over the shards of its shell. His claws clicked delicately on the stone. The fine scales along its head and spine were a deep, burnished green, mottled with darker patches and faint lines of lighter, almost golden hue. Smoke curled lazily from its nostrils. Jon extended his uninjured hand, palm up. "Mad," he muttered to himself. "I've gone mad, that's all." The dragon sniffed his fingers. Its tongue flicked out, quick as a snake's, tasting his scent, his sweat, his fear. Then, with the obstinate certainty of any child that has chosen a thing, it clambered up onto his hand, claws pricking his skin. It was lighter than it looked, all wiry muscle and hollow bone. Heat seeped into his flesh where it touched him. Not the searing blast of moments before, but a deep, steady warmth, like holding a living coal cupped in his palm. It crawled up his wrist onto his forearm, its little talons finding purchase in the worn wool of his sleeve. When it reached his shoulder, it settled there, curling its tail around the back of his neck. Its body fit against him as if it had been made to perch there. "Seven hells," Jon whispered again, softer this time. Ghost approached in cautious stages, every step a negotiation with instinct. The dragon turned its head, watching him. Their noses came within a foot of each other. Ghost bared his teeth in a warning that might have cowed a bear. The dragon answered with a low, rumbling sound that Jon felt more than heard, a vibration through his bones. "Enough," Jon said, surprising himself. "Both of you." The word carried more command than he meant. Perhaps it was the tone, the way it echoed off the stone, or something else altogether. Ghost subsided, lowering his head. The dragon blinked slowly, then turned its gaze back to Jon, as if accepting the arrangement. Somewhere farther up in the crypts, water dripped. Far above, in the great keep, men and women moved through their own grief. Down here, in the hot, close air, a bastard of Winterfell stood with a dragon on his shoulder and a direwolf at his heel and felt the shape of his life tilt beneath him. "What in all the gods' names am I to do with you?" he murmured. The dragon answered with a brief puff of smoke and a tiny, crackling burp of greenish flame that singed a lock of his hair. Jon jerked back, slapping at his head. Ghost barked, the sound sharp and astonished. The dragon clung tighter, claws digging in. And despite himself, a ragged, stunned laugh broke from Jon Snow's chest. Naming it came oddly easily. He did not intend to. Names were not things he tossed about lightly. He had known since childhood what it meant to have a name withheld. To be a Snow rather than a Stark was to have a door always half shut in his face. Yet as he stood there in the oppressive warmth, feeling the dragon's claws and hearing Ghost's uneasy breathing, the words slipped out of him like breath. "Rhaegal," he said, almost to himself. The dragon's head turned as if in answer. Old Nan's tales had been full of Targaryens, as dragons' tales always were. If stone could remember, then the walls of Winterfell must have vibrated for months with the sound of her voice recounting the rebellion, the trident, the Mad King's wildfire, the fall of dragons. She had spoken often of Prince Rhaegar, the Silver Prince, who had loved songs more than swords until the end, when he had donned his black armor and flown to his doom beneath Robert Baratheon's hammer. Rhaegal. It tasted of the south and of fire. It sounded wrong in his mouth and yet right, as if the dragon had been waiting for someone to call it by that name. "If you burn me for that, I'll rethink it," Jon muttered. Rhaegal. He could not think of it as anything else now. Merely blinked and tightened his tail around Jon's neck more firmly, as if staking a claim. "We cannot stay here," Jon said. Talking aloud helped keep the enormity of the moment at bay. "They'll come looking if I'm gone too long. And if they find you in here, seven only know what they'll do." Ghost huffed, which Jon chose to take as agreement. He cast one last glance at the hollow beneath Lyanna's statue. The other two eggs lay there still, dark and pale, silent in their cradle of stone. For a heartbeat he considered touching them as he had the green one, smearing his blood across their shells. seeing if they too would crack and breathe and scream. Madness. 1 dragon was disaster enough. 3 would bring the world down around his ears. He dragged the stone slab back into place with care, though his arms shook from more than effort. Rhaegal clung like a burr, digging those tiny claws deeper to keep his balance. Heat radiated from the little body, soaking into Jon's neck and shoulder until his skin prickled. When the slab settled, sealing the hollow, the air in the crypts seemed to cool by a fraction. Jon took the torch up once more and turned toward the stairs. Climbing with one hand and a dragon on his shoulder proved a challenge he had never imagined needing to solve. He went slowly, feeling Rhaegal's weight shift with every step. Ghost padded ahead, pausing at each turn to look back, as if making sure his strange new packmate kept up. At the top of the steps, Jon paused. The corridor beyond was dark save for the distant thread of light from the courtyard. If anyone stood there, if any servant or guard rounded the corner now. "Stay still," he whispered to the dragon. "Stay quiet, please." It made a small, crackling sound deep in its throat, but did not stir. He moved like a thief through his own home, shadows sliding across his face, torch held low. Twice he thought he heard footsteps and ducked into an alcove, heart hammering, ghost pressed against his legs. Each time the sound proved to be no more than the building's old bones settling. By some grace of whatever gods ruled this mad night, he reached his own little room in the half-fallen tower without being seen. Once the door was closed and barred behind him, his knees gave out. He sat heavily on the narrow bed, back against the cold wall, lungs aching with the held breath of the last 5 minutes. Rhaegal slithered down from his shoulder to his lap, claws leaving faint marks on the rough wool. Up close, in the steadier light of the rushes, Jon could see the fine details of the little beast. Each scale along its spine was edged with lighter green, almost silver in some places, forming patterns like leaves or interlocked armor. Its belly scales were paler, more yellow, the skin there softer. Its wings, still damp in places, twitched as if in dream. Its scent filled the small room. Smoke and hot stone and something sharper, metallic, like blood on a hearthstone. "You should not exist," Jon said quietly. "Not here, not with me." The dragon yawned, revealing that neat, deadly array of teeth, then promptly curled into a coil on his thigh, pinning the rough patch where his breeches had worn thin. Within moments, its sides rose and fell in slow, steady rhythm, sleeping, as if the world had not just turned on its head. Ghost sat in the corner nearest the door, positioning himself between Jon and any danger that might come through. His eyes remained fixed on the dragon. Every so often, his lips wrinkled in a silent snarl before smoothing again. "We have enough enemies without you two eating each other," Jon murmured. "You'll have to learn to share." Ghost blinked at him. Rhaegal's tail twitched once, then stilled. The room felt smaller than ever, too small to hold grief and wonder and fear all at once. Jon leaned his head back against the rough stone and let his eyes close, just for a moment. He saw his father's face behind his eyelids, not the way Maester Luwin's letter had hinted, blood on his neck, his head on a spike, but as Jon had last seen him, standing in the courtyard in the pale autumn sunlight, hand on Jon's shoulder. "If you wish to take the black, I will not stop you. If you wish to stay, I will find another path for you. You are my son, whatever anyone says." "I don't know what path this is," Jon whispered to the empty air. Rhaegal stirred, pressing closer, his heat seeping through cloth and skin, burrowing toward Jon's bones. For the first time since Luwin had read the letter, the hollow in Jon's chest felt less like a void and more like a space being filled, painfully and without his consent, by something wild and new. Morning came late to Winterfell, as if the sun itself were reluctant to climb above the bleak horizon. Jon had slept little, his mind as restless as Rhaegal, who had alternated between curling around his neck like a living scarf and pacing the rafters of the little room with ungainly flaps of his half-dried wings. In the end, secrecy proved as impossible as ignoring a fever. By the time the first gray light seeped through the arrow slit, Jon had reached a conclusion. He could not hide this. Not for long. Rhaegal grew with every hour, his limbs surer, his movements more coordinated. Twice during the night, he had sneezed little gouts of greenish flame that charred the edge of Jon's blanket and left black scars on the stones. If Jon kept him concealed, it would only be a matter of time before a servant came in with fresh rushes or bread and saw something that could not be unseen. Better to walk into the fire than wait for it to find him. "Come," he said. Rhaegal clung to his shoulder as Jon made his way back through the corridors. Under the cloak, the dragon's weight was a hot, insistent pressure, like smuggled coals. Ghost padded at his heel, his unease a constant, prickling presence at the edge of Jon's awareness. The great hall buzzed with subdued activity when he entered. Servants moved with purposeful haste, carrying trenchers and sweeping ashes. Men-at-arms clustered at long tables, murmuring in low voices that fell away as soon as Jon stepped inside. At the far end, beneath the carved direwolves, Robb Stark stood beside his mother. He already wore his sword. His hair was still damp from a hasty wash. Lines had carved themselves into his face overnight that had not been there the day before. Beside him, Cailin Stark looked as if she had not slept at all. Shadows darkened the hollows beneath her eyes. Maester Luwin and Ser Rodrik Castle stood nearby, bent over a rough map of the north spread across a trestle table. At Jon's approach, Luwin's gaze lifted, his expression shifting from distraction to wary attention. "Jon," Robb said, "we were about to send for you. We need—" He broke off, frowning. "What in the name of the old gods is that smell?" Jon's heart lurched, but there was no turning back now. He shrugged his cloak off. Rhaegal scrambled for purchase as the fabric fell away, his claws catching briefly in the wool before he worked his way free. He unfurled his wings in a reflexive stretch, filling the air above Jon's shoulder with a sudden fan of green and gold membrane. Smoke curled lazily from his nostrils. The hall froze. The noise of movement, of voices, of clattering dishes, all stopped as if someone had taken a knife to the sound. The servants went rigid where they stood. A platter crashed to the floor somewhere to Jon's left, bread bouncing. No one spared it a glance. Caitlin Stark's hand flew to her throat. "Mother, have mercy." Robb took an involuntary step forward, then back, as though torn between wonder and fear. "Is that a dragon?" Maester Luwin said softly. His voice held the same mix of dread and awe Jon had heard last night in the crypts. "By all the gods." Ser Rodrik's hand went to the hilt of his sword, then fell away. Steel would likely do little good here. He seemed to realize that as his fingers closed on the pommel. Rhaegal hissed, neck arching. The sound vibrated in Jon's bones. "He won't harm you," Jon said quickly, though he was far from certain that was true. "Not unless you try to harm me. Or him." Caitlin tore her gaze from the dragon to fix it on Jon, her expression raw. "What have you done?" Jon's mouth had gone dry. He forced the words out. "I found him, in the crypts, under Lyanna Stark's statue. He hatched." "Hatchet?" Rickon, who had been sitting near the fire, scrambled to his feet. "Like a chick." "Stay back," Caitlin snapped, thrusting an arm out to bar him. Robb moved, sweeping Rickon behind him. His eyes never left the dragon. "Are there more?" Jon swallowed. "2 eggs. Still stone, I think." He did not mention the heat, the way the shells had seemed to drink the warmth from his hand. "I touched this one. Cut myself. My blood." And then Maester Luwin approached slowly, every line of his body telegraphing caution. "May I?" he asked, his gaze flicking from Jon to Rhaegal and back. "Careful," Jon said. Rhaegal watched the maester's approach with slit-pupilled intensity. Smoke puffed from his nostrils. When Luwin raised a hand, the dragon snapped at his fingers. Not quite biting, more of a warning. Luwin jerked back. "Remarkable," he murmured, more to himself than anyone. "Truly remarkable. A living dragon in the north. In Winterfell." "It cannot stay here," Caitlin said, Her voice had gone flat, the edges honed by fear. "We are not Targaryens. We are Starks of Winterfell. Dragons bring fire and madness. They bring war. They bring power," Theon Greyjoy said from near the benches, eyes gleaming as he leaned forward. "The kind that makes men think twice before drawing steel. I've heard the stories. Aegon Targaryen took all of Westeros with 3 dragons and a handful of men. And what did it bring him?" Caitlin snapped. "A line of madmen and a city burned in his son's fire. My lord husband fought to end that line. He bled and lost brothers and father to see the last of the dragons die." Her gaze swung back to Jon, pinning him like a spear. "And now you bring one into my hall." "It wasn't..." Jon swallowed the protest. He had not asked for this. He had not sought glory or power. But that did not change the fact that he had gone where he should not, touched what he should have left alone. "He's mine," he said instead, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "He chose me." Caitlin flinched as if struck. "You are not, Cat." Robb's voice cut across hers, sharp with warning. For a heartbeat, the hall teetered on the edge of something dangerous. Jon could feel eyes on him from every direction. On the servant's fear, the guard's calculation, the hungry speculation in Theon's gaze, the wary curiosity in Ser Roderick's. He felt suddenly, acutely, how much he did not belong, and how much worse this dragon made it. Robb stepped forward, inserting himself between Jon and the full weight of the hall's attention. "He is my brother," Robb said. "My father's son. Whatever else he is, whatever else this is, that does not change." His words hit Jon like a second blow, as painful and as bracing as the first. "Brother or no," Caitlin said, her composure fraying, "that thing is a threat. To us, to our children, to the north. What will the Lannisters say when they hear there is a dragon in Winterfell? What will the king say? What will anyone say who remembers the last time dragons flew over Westeros? They will say," Robb replied, "that the north is not to be taken lightly, that we are not sheep for southern lions to feast on." He turned to Jon. "Can you control it?" Jon opened his mouth, then closed it. The honest answer was he did not know. Rhaegal had not burned him alive yet, which seemed as much chance as anything else. He could feel the dragon's mood, in a way, curiosity, annoyance, a simmering banked heat that rose when he felt threatened. Whether that was control or simply proximity, he could not say. "I can try," he said at last. "He listens to me, more than to anyone else." "That is not enough," Caitlin whispered. Maester Luwin rubbed a hand over his forehead. "My lord, my lady, we must think. The realm is already unsteady. King Robert Baratheon is dead. The Lannisters hold the boy Joffrey as king. Your lord father has been executed. War will follow. The north will not be allowed to sit idle. And if we have a dragon when war comes?" Theon said sharply. "What then?" Robb looked from Jon to the dragon and back. His jaw clenched. Jon saw the boy he had known struggling with the lord he was becoming. "We will not kill him," Robb said finally. "We are not butchers. We do not slay a miracle in its cradle." Caitlyn's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Robb, you told me last night we must be strong," he said more gently. "That father is gone and I must be lord in his place. This is my choice. Jon and his Rhaegal," the name felt odd on his tongue, "will remain. We will keep this quiet as long as we can. Maester Luwin, you will see to finding out everything you can about dragons. Ser Roderick, you will double the guard on the crypts and the walls both. And Jon," he met Jon's gaze, "Jon will stay by my side. Not at the wall. Not yet. I need him here." The floor seemed to tilt again beneath Jon's feet. All the nights he had lain awake, dreaming of taking the black, of escaping the constant sense of being out of place. All the mornings when the wall had seemed a clean, if cold, solution to the problem of his life. All of it scattered like froth. "Robb," he began. "The Night's Watch can wait," Robb said. "Father is dead. The world has changed. So must we." Cailin closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they held a brittle resignation. "If this is your will, my son, I will not gainsay it before the household." In the privacy of their chambers, Jon suspected the argument would be far from over. Rhaegal chose that moment to climb higher on Jon's shoulders and let out a small, crackling roar. Greenish flame licked between his teeth, gone in an instant but searing bright. The closest servants flinched. Someone crossed themselves with the sign of the seven before remembering where they were. Jon lifted a hand to steady the dragon, feeling that now familiar warmth seep into his skin. "My lord," Ser Rodrik said roughly, "the men will want to know when to ride. The ravens must go to our bannermen if we are to call them." "Your command." Robb Stark straightened beneath the carved direwolves. In the thick silence that followed, Jon could almost hear the weight of Eddard Stark's sword settling on his son's shoulders. "We bury our grief," Robb said. "We sharpen our swords, and we send for the north to ride. If the Lannisters think to break us, let them learn what it means to wake dragons in the snow." Days blurred, pulled along by the inexorable current of war. Ravens flew from Winterfell in all directions, bearing Robb Stark's call to the banners. Men arrived in dribs and drabs at first, then in a steady stream, bringing the smells of their own lands with them: pine and peat, horse and salt and old steel. The yard filled with tents and wagons, with smiths' hammers and the barked orders of captains drilling half-trained levies into something resembling soldiers. Jon found his world shrinking even as the castle grew more crowded. When he was not in the yard sparring with Robb and the others, he was with Rhaegal. The dragon grew as if some invisible hand were tugging him upward. What had been a thing hardly larger than a cat became, in the space of a week, the size of a medium dog, then larger still. His wings strengthened. The first time he leapt from Jon's shoulder to the top of a practice post with a single beat of those wings, it took Jon's breath away. Now, in the cold light of dawn, Rhaegal perched there, his tail coiled neatly around the splintered wood. His hide had dried to a burnished gleam, the ridges along his spine standing sharper and more pronounced. His eyes burned brighter with every passing day. Jon held out a strip of meat. Rhaegal snapped it up, teeth clicking. Blood speckled the dragon's muzzle. He tipped his head back, swallowed, and immediately stretched his neck for more. "You'll spoil him," Theon Greyjoy said from where he lounged against the fence. "He'll forget how to hunt and expect you to chop his meat for him forever." Jon glanced at him. "If you'd like to stand in front of his fire while he practices, he can hunt you instead." Theon barked a laugh, though his gaze flicked uneasily to the faint scorch marks on the far wall of the yard where Rhaegal had been practicing just that. "I'll pass. I'm fond of my eyebrows." Robb approached, sword at his hip, cloak half-fastened. His eyes were bloodshot, his face drawn. Sleep came sparingly to him now, doled out between councils and drills and quiet, heated arguments behind closed doors. "How much has he grown?" Robb asked, leaning on the fence beside Theon. "In the time it took you to put on that cloak?" Jon said. "A foot at least." "Mock all you like," Theon said. "You didn't see him when he was hatched, Robb. He was like a snake with wings. Now," he whistled low, "another month and you'll be able to sit on his back." Jon glanced at Rhaegal, picturing it. Fire and wind, claws raking the air, the ground falling away beneath him. His stomach lurched in mingled fear and exhilaration. Robb's gaze had gone distant. "A dragon rider in our ranks," he murmured. "The Lannisters won't know what to do with themselves." "Shit themselves, most like," Theon said cheerfully. "Language," Robb said, though without heat. He turned to Jon, sober again. "We leave soon. 2 days, if the lads from Carhold arrive on time. We'll ride to Moat Cailin first, then south to the Twins and the Riverlands." Jon nodded. "And me?" Robb's jaw tightened. "You ride with me." "With him." His glance flicked to Rhaegal. "The men will follow a dragon, or they'll bolt like frightened horses. Best they get used to the sight of him with my own banner." "And if he decides he doesn't like the look of Lord Karstark?" Theon asked. "Or Great Jon Umber?" There'll be a hole in the ranks and a great deal of shouting. Then they will learn to be polite, Robb said. Won't they? For all his jesting, Jon could hear the uncertainty under his friend's words. No one knew what it meant to ride to war with a dragon. The tales of Aegon's conquest were older than any living man. Aegon had been a Targaryen, born to fire and blood. Jon was a Snow. He looked at Rhaegal. He's not a sword you can wear at your side, he said. He's himself, and he's young, quick to anger. It's like training a hawk with the temper of a bear. And you, Robb asked, can you keep your temper when you see Lannister red on the field? Jon thought of his father's head, of Sansa's tears, of Arya's denial, of Cailin's broken voice. He thought of the dragon hatchling in the crypts, climbing his arm with fresh blood still steaming on its shell. I can try, he said. Ghost padded closer, brushing against his leg. Rhaegal hissed softly, wings flaring, but did not launch himself. The two circled each other in the yard of Jon's life, wolf and dragon, each wary, each aware that the other was part of him as surely as his own shadow. See to your gear, Robb said at last. We drill again before midday. The men look to you now almost as much as they do to me. You're a symbol whether you like it or not. Jon grimaced. I'd rather be a man. Robb's smile was tired and brief. Most symbols would. He clapped Jon on the shoulder, nodding once more to the dragon, and strode off to his duties. Theon lingered a heartbeat longer, eyes narrowed in thought. What? Jon asked. Theon shrugged. Just thinking. If the Iron Islands had had a beast like that when the Targaryens came, things might have turned out different. Would they? Jon asked quietly. Or would the Targaryens have just burned the islands to cinders to get rid of the competition? Theon snorted. You're learning how lords think. That's either a good sign or a bad one. He pushed away from the fence. Don't get yourself killed playing with fire, Snow. I'd hate to have to explain to some southern girl that the dragon ate you before you could kiss her. Jon rolled his eyes, but a wry smile tugged at his lips. When Theon was gone, he turned back to Rhaegal. The dragon watched him, head tilted, eyes bright. Smoke curled lazily from his nostrils. His tail flicked, restless. We're going south, Jon told him. To war. Rhaegal blinked once, slowly, as if the words meant nothing and everything to him. He opened his mouth and let out a shrill, eager screech that sent the nearest horses rearing and the men-at-arms stamping to sow. Of them, when the day came to leave Winterfell, the sky wore a thin veil of cloud, pale as old bone. Snow fell in slow, lazy spirals, the flakes too small and sparse to truly stick, more gesture than storm. The yard seethed with men and horses and wagons. Banners snapped in the chill breeze. Mottled grays and deep greens, stags and bears and sunbursts. The gray direwolf of Stark rippled above them all from the tallest staff, its stitched head seeming almost alive as it moved against the white. Robb sat his horse straight-backed, mail glinting beneath his heavy cloak, his father's sword at his side. Cailin stood on the steps of the great hall, Bran's chair beside her, Rickon clinging to her skirts. Sansa lingered half a step behind, pale and silent, the loss of her southern dreams etched faintly around her mouth. Jon mounted a rangy gray gelding he had ridden since boyhood. The horse snorted and rolled its eyes whenever Rhaegal moved too close, but had begun, through necessity and exposure, to accept the dragon's presence. Rhaegal himself stood at Jon's side, the chain attached to the collar around his neck more a formality than true restraint. Jon knew, and suspected Rhaegal did too, that there were few chains that could hold him now if he truly wished to break free. Ghost wove through the legs of men and horses alike, white fur bright against the trampled mud. Maester Luwin moved among them all, offering last-minute words, checking saddles and straps with the practiced eye of a man who had seen more campaigns than he cared to count. He paused by Jon's stirrup, looking up. "Take care," he said simply. His gaze flicked to Rhaegal. "Of yourself, of him, of Robb." "I will," Jon said. The promise felt too large for his chest, but he made it anyway. Cailin's eyes found him as the horns blew the first note. For a moment, there was nothing between them but years of unsaid things. She looked at Rhaegal, then back to Jon. "If you bring my son home," she said, voice carrying just enough for him to hear over the snorting of horses and the creak of leather, "I will count that debt above all others." It was as close to acceptance as he had ever heard from her. Jon inclined his head, not trusting his voice. Bran watched him with an intensity that belied his stillness. "Come back," Bran said, "and bring me a story." "I will," Jon promised. "Better than old Nan's." Rickon sniffled. "Bring me a dragon," he demanded. "I'll see what I can do," Jon said, thinking of the 2 stone eggs still sleeping in the crypts. Robb raised his hand. The yard fell gradually silent as men turned their attention toward him. He looked older than his years in that moment, the weight of command sitting uneasily but firmly on his shoulders. "Men of the North," he called. "They have killed our lord. They have taken our sister. They think us wolves to be penned and starved. We ride to show them what happens when you cage a wolf." A rumble answered him, rising from the throats of bannermen and small folk alike. "The king in the north," someone shouted. It was too early yet for crowns, but the words hung there, shimmering with possibility. Robb's gaze slid to Jon, then to the dragon at his side. "And if they have forgotten," Robb said, voice dropping, "we'll remind them that winter is not the only thing that comes for those who wrong us." He lowered his hand. The horns blew again, sharp and bracing. The gates of Winterfell creaked open. Jon nudged his horse forward. Rhaegal moved with him, the chain slack between them, wings half unfurled as if tasting the air. The dragon's eyes were bright, hungry for whatever lay beyond the walls. Ghost bounded ahead, a white streak on the road, looking back occasionally as if to make sure his pack followed. As he passed under the gatehouse, Jon felt the weight of the stones overhead like the closing of a book. He glanced back over his shoulder, just once. The towers of Winterfell rose against the pale sky, familiar and distant all at once. Smoke curled from the chimneys. The Godswood's bare branches clawed upward beyond the wall. Somewhere beneath the hill, in the warm, close dark of the crypts, 2 eggs slept on under Lyanna Stark's silent stone gaze. He turned his face south. The road stretched ahead, muddy and rutted, leading first to Moat Cailin, then beyond, through swamps and rivers and finally to the heart of the realm. To the Riverlands, where Lannister fire already burned. To King's Landing, where his father's blood had stained the stones of a southern sept. Rhaegal loosed a piercing cry that echoed off the gray sky. The men around Jon flinched, then straightened. Some crossed themselves, others touched the hilts of their swords, as if drawing courage from the feel of steel. Jon reached up, fingers brushing the warm scales along Rhaegal's neck. "Come on, then," he murmured. "Let's show them what happens when Dragonfire burns in the snow." The northern host rolled forward, banner trees swaying, hoofs churning the frozen ground. Above them all, for now, the sky remained empty, but not for long. The neck stank of rot and old secrets. Jon Snow had never seen land like it. The north was harsh but honest. A sweep of snow and rock and gray sky where a man could see half a day's ride in every direction if he found a high enough hill. Here the world closed in. The air hung heavy and wet, clinging to his clothes, his hair, his skin. Pale tendrils of mist coiled around the horse's legs, hiding pools of black water that could swallow a man whole. Trees rose from the muck like drowned men's fingers, thin and gray and draped in moss that dragged in the water. "Cheerful place," Theon Greyjoy muttered as his gelding slogged through another patch of mud up to its hocks. "Makes the Iron Islands look like the summer sea." Jon said nothing. His eyes were on Rhaegal. The dragon moved with them, stepping from tussock to tussock with a wary grace that had not been there weeks ago. He had grown with unnerving speed. What had perched on Jon's shoulder and fit in his hands now stood higher than Ghost at the shoulder, his wingspan wider than a man was tall. Each beat of those wings sent ripples across the nearby pools. His scales had deepened in color, the greens darkening to almost black in places, shot through with fine veins of bright gold. When he turned his head just so, the light caught him and made him gleam like wet jade. The chain at his neck was an iron formality, more for the comfort of the men than any true restraint. Jon held it wrapped around his gloved hand, feeling the faint, constant pull as Rhaegal tested its length, sniffing at the air as if searching for some scent only he could sense. Men stared as he passed. Some tried not to, failing miserably. Others made signs against evil when they thought no one watched. The crannogmen who had come out from their bog towers to guide the host through the safest paths watched Rhaegal with flat, unreadable eyes, their faces painted in greens and browns that blurred the line between man and marsh. "Never thought to see fire walking the bogs," one of them said quietly as Jon led Rhaegal past. "The neck remembers dragons. Not kindly. You remember everything not kindly," Theon called from behind Jon, earning himself a slit-eyed glance from the bogman. "You lot frighten easier than southern maids. Southern maids don't poison their enemies with frog venom," Robb Stark said, reining in beside Jon. Mud spattered his boots, his cloak, even the edge of his mail, but his seat on the horse was steady, his gaze fixed ahead. "We'll need the crannogmen's help more than your jokes if we're to get through this in one piece. My jokes will be what keeps us sane when we're knee-deep in dead marsh," Theon said. "You'll be grateful yet." Jon let their banter wash over him. His attention kept sliding back to the hulking shape on the horizon. Moat Cailin had once commanded this land, an impregnable choke point between north and south. In the tales, Jon had heard it described as a great fortress with towers that scraped the sky, walls thicker than a longship was broad, a castle every bit the equal of Winterfell. The reality was a ruin. 3 towers still stood, in a manner of speaking, wreathed in mist and half swallowed by the swamp. One leaned at an alarming angle, its crown of stone battlements crumbling. The others rose a little straighter, but chunks were missing from their flanks, as if a giant had taken bites from them. The walls between had long since slumped into the bog. What remained of the causeway was a narrow ribbon of relatively solid ground flanked by deceiving pools of still, black water. "Ugly," Theon pronounced, "and they call my home bleak." "Your home is made of rock and salt and the clink of chains," Jon said. "This is merely old." Rhaegal sniffed, then gave a low, dissatisfied rumble. The ancient fortress reeked of damp stone and old blood, scents that repelled and intrigued him both. "Lord Reed's men cleared the path," Robb said quietly. "But there may still be pockets of resistance." "Squashed frogs," Theon suggested. "Old ghosts," Robb replied. Jon's gaze followed the narrow strip of land that led between the towers. He thought of stories old Nan had told him when they were small, of the Undulls and the First Men, of southern kings who had broken their armies against the defenses of the Neck, of strange powers in the bogs that lured men to their deaths, and of dragon lords, silver-haired and terrible, whose beasts had once sailed on the air above these very ruins. Now it would be Rhaegal's turn. "Do you feel it?" Robb asked after a moment. "The south." Jon drew a breath. The air smelled no different, water and rot, the sour stench of stagnant pools, but there was something under it, a sense that the world was narrowing, that once they passed between those leaning towers, they would be stepping not just over a line on a map, but into the jaws of something vast and hungry. He nodded. "Good," Robb said. His voice had a rough edge to it now, like a blade that had seen too many whetstones. "I want you to remember that feeling when you decide whether to burn or not." Jon swallowed. His hand tightened involuntarily on the chain. "I'll remember," he said. The first time Rhaegal took him truly into the air, Jon thought his heart might burst. It was not planned. It never could have been. They had reached the narrowing of the causeway where the bog pressed close, dark water lapping almost to the horses' hooves. The ruins of one of the old towers loomed above them, its broken teeth of stone biting into the gray sky. The air felt thick, heavy with the breath of the swamp. Rhaegal's restlessness had been building for miles. He had tugged at the chain, snorted, flared his wings at invisible threats. Now, as a gust of wind slid between the leaning towers, He threw back his head and screamed. The sound ripped through the bog like a blade. Birds exploded from the reeds in a panicked cloud. Horses danced, wide-eyed. A pack mule brayed and nearly toppled into the water, saved only by a hauler's quick grab at its halter. "Easy," Jon shouted, though to whom he wasn't sure. "Easy, boy, easy." Rhaegal swung his head toward him, eyes bright with urgency. There was something in that look Jon had learned to read over the past weeks. Need not hunger or anger, but something more primal. Space. The hot, deep certainty that the ground no longer felt like the right place to be. "No," Jon said under his breath. "Not here. The footing is bad. The men aren't ready." Rhaegal lunged. The chain jerked taut, nearly dragging Jon from his saddle. His horse screamed, rearing. Jon barely had time to throw his good hand around Rhaegal's neck along with the chain, boots slipping from the stirrups, before wings slammed down on either side of him like unfurling banners. For a moment, nothing happened. The dragon's claws scrabbled on the muddy causeway, gouging deep furrows. Water splashed. Men cursed. Robb shouted something Jon could not catch. Then Rhaegal found purchase. The world dropped away. Wind tore at Jon's cloak, his hair, his very breath. The ground that had always been so solid beneath his feet shrank with terrifying speed. The horses and men on it dwindling into toys and then into ants. The causeway became a thin brown line through a sea of black and green. The ruins of Moat Cailin, so close and looming a heartbeat ago, slid away beneath them, its broken towers revealed in their full, sorry state. Jon's stomach lurched. For a wild instant he thought he would fall. His fingers dug into the chain and the rough scales beneath. Rhaegal's body was a furnace beneath his legs, heat radiating through his boots, his thighs. Every muscle in the dragon's torso worked in concert. Wing beats pounding the air, tail lashing for balance, hind legs tucked close. "Seven hells," Jon gasped. His voice was snatched away by the wind. Below, he could see Robb's face turned up, features tiny but unmistakable, a pale oval edged in the dark fur of his cloak. The entire column had slowed, men craning their necks, horses shying. The wolf banners snapped wildly as if in a storm. The sky was not so high as he had imagined from the ground. Came close, pressing down in a dome of pale gray. The air was colder up here, biting through his clothes. Tasted clean despite the bogs below. For the space of several heartbeats, fear gave way to something else. Something sharp and bright and heady. Freedom. The neck, the south, the weight of his bastard name, the ghosts of the Crypts, even the memory of his father's execution. All of it fell away, left on the road behind and below. Up here there was only the wind and the sun glimmering weakly through the clouds, and the steady, relentless power of the creature between his knees. "You mad thing!" Jon shouted into Rhaegal's ear frill, giddy. "You bloody mad thing!" Rhaegal roared in answer, the sound vibrating through Jon's bones. He did not know how long they were aloft. Time felt different in the air, stretched and compressed all at once. Eventually, however, the dragon's wing beats began to lose some of their ferocious snap. His sides heaved with effort. He tilted, not quite steady, as a gust buffeted them. "Down," Jon said. "Down, you fool. You've proven your point." Whether Rhaegal understood the words or the feel of his rider's grip, he began to spiral lower in wide, clumsy circles. The towers of Moat Cailin slid past, then rose as they dropped. The causeway grew wider, the men on it resolving into individuals instead of a moving smear. They hit the ground harder than Jon would have liked. Rhaegal's claws sank deep into the mud, skidding. Jon nearly slid from his back, only barely hauling himself upright with a curse. The column had come to a halt. Men stared openly now, fear writ plain in some faces, awe in others. A skeletal old man in patched mail, one of the Reed's sworn swords, had sunk to one knee, muttering something that sounded very much like a prayer. Robb rode forward, cheeks flushed, eyes blazing. "In future," he said, breath visible in little white puffs, "warn me before you decide to fly over my army." If he'd warned me, I would have said no. Jon shot back, still shaking. Apparently he knew that. Theon's laughter came out half breathless. You looked like a sack of turnips strapped to a wagon. You try staying on when the wagon's on fire and the ground's vanished, Jon snapped. But there was a tremor of wild laughter in his own voice. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He couldn't tell if it was terror or exhilaration. Robb's gaze flicked to Rhaegal. The dragon's chest rose and fell in great heaves, steam puffing from his nostrils as he drew in lungfuls of cold air. His wings drooped, but his eyes were bright and unrepentant. "The men will talk," Robb said quietly. "They already were," Jon replied. "Now they'll have more to say." Robb nodded once. "Good. Let the South tremble at stories before they ever see him." He wheeled his horse, raising his voice. "Forward. We waste daylight. The sooner we are through this cursed bog, the sooner we can see what the lion has done to our kin." The column creaked into motion again. Men cast wary, sideways glances at Jon and his dragon as they passed. Some touched fingers to foreheads or hearts. Others grinned as if they'd just seen the best mummers show in the realm. Jon watched them go, one hand resting on Rhaegal's neck. "We're in it now," he murmured. "Sky and all." Rhaegal huffed, then nudged him with his snout so hard he nearly toppled. Jon shoved back, a rueful smile tugging at his mouth, before taking up the chain and leading the dragon onward. South of the neck, the world bled. The bogs gave way by slow degrees to firmer ground, to low hills and stands of oak and ash. The air dried out. The smell of rot receded. In its place came other scents: wood smoke, horse, the sour tang of unwashed men in too close quarters. And blood. Always blood. The Riverlands had always been the beating heart of Westeros. Eddard Stark had once told Jon, sharing bread and salt at the high table. Whoever held them held the roads, the rivers, the grain. Armies had marched across these lands for as long as anyone kept record. They had never marched with dragons at their head. Robb's scouts came back almost daily now with news of Lannister movements. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, had driven hard into the Tully lands while Lord Tywin Lannister camped further south with the main host. Villages had burned in their wake. That was how they found the first of the foraging parties. Smoke had drawn them, a thin, dirty column threading up into the darkening sky. Robb sent outriders first, men from the mountain clans who knew how to move unseen. They came back with tight jaws and flat voices. "Lions," one said. "Half a dozen, maybe more, taking what they can carry, burning what they can't." "And the people?" Robb asked. "If they're quick, they run," the man replied. "If not," he didn't finish. He didn't need to. They approached under cover of the trees, the northern light already fading. Jon could see the village through the branches. A handful of timber and daub houses around a well. A small sept with its 7-pointed star carved over the door. A scattering of outbuildings. 2 of the houses were already ablaze, flames licking hungrily at thatch. A skinny boy ran with a sloshing bucket from the well. A Lannister soldier knocked him sprawling with a careless backhand. A woman knelt over a figure in the mud, her hands pressed to a wound Jon could not see. Her mouth open in a sound that did not carry but that he felt in his teeth all the same. Robb watched, jaw clenched. Theon's fingers twitched toward his sword hilt. "They don't know we're here," Robb said. "Not yet. We hit them hard, from both sides. No quarter. We could do it in half the time if we let the dragon go first," Theon said. Jon shot him a look. "And burn the villagers with them? The sept? The fields?" Theon shrugged. "Better a burnt field than a full Lannister belly." "No," Robb said. "We're not butchers." Jon knew what he wanted without needing the rest. "Show them we're here," Robb said anyway. "Scare them, break them. If they run, cut them down. But try to keep the fire on the wolves and off the sheep." "I'll try," Jon said. The words felt the same every time he spoke them. He was beginning to hate them. Rhaegal paced at his side, restless. His scales shimmered in the deepening dusk, edges catching the firelight from the burning houses. The villagers had not yet seen him. Their attention was all on the lions in their midst, on the ruin of their lives. Ghost ghosted along the underbrush, red eyes hot coals in the gloom. Mounting Rhaegal had become marginally less suicidal since their flight over Moat Cailin, but there was no true grace to it yet. Jon scrambled and slid, tugged and cursed, until he found his seat at the base of the dragon's neck, where the ridges of bone gave him something to hook his legs around. They had fashioned a crude harness of leather and rope. It chafed and pinched but kept him from tumbling off at the first misstep. "Up," Jon whispered. Rhaegal's wing beats stirred the leaves. The dragon surged forward, then leapt, claws tearing divots from the soil. They burst through the treetops in a rush of green and gray and smoke. The wind slapped Jon's face. Below, the village yawned open around the well. For an instant, no one noticed them. The Lannister men-at-arms laughed, tossing loaves of bread and smoked hams into sacks. One dragged a girl by the wrist from a doorway, ignoring her half-strangled cries. Another shoved a bundle of clothing into a barrel. Then Rhaegal screamed. It was a sound torn from some deep, ancient place, made of hunger and rage and the sheer exultation of power. It drove itself into the bones of everyone who heard it. The horses went mad first. They reared, eyes rolling, whites showing. One broke its tether and bolted, trampling a Lannister soldier in its panic. The lions looked up, faces turned skyward. Jon saw their expressions: confusion, fear, disbelief. One made the sign of the seven hurriedly, fingers jerking. "Now," Jon breathed. Rhaegal opened his mouth. Fire poured forth. It came out green-yellow, tinged with some deeper heat, a stream of flame that leapt the space between dragon and earth in an instant. Jon's eyes watered. The heat blasted back against his face. He squinted through his lashes. The ground erupted. One of the houses exploded outward as the fire hit its thatch, a blossom of embers and burning straw. Flames washed over the yard where the Lannister horses were tied, engulfing hay and wood and leather. Men screamed. The smell of burnt hair and cooking meat hit Jon's nostrils, thick and foul. "Lower," he shouted, fighting the instinct to wrench Rhaegal away. "Lower, not the houses." Rhaegal shifted, angling his head. The next gout of flame caught two Lannister men squarely as they ran. For an instant Jon saw them, outlined in greenish light, mouths open, hands raised, and then there was only fire. He gagged. His stomach lurched. Below, Robb and the northern riders burst from the trees with a thunder of hooves, swords out. In the chaos, the villagers scattered, some running for the remaining intact houses, others diving into the nearest ditches. A few stood frozen, knocked senseless by sight and sound and terror. "Stark!" a northern voice roared. "Winterfell!" Steel met steel. Horses crashed into men. The Lannister soldiers, already half-shattered by the dragon's appearance, fought with the desperation of trapped rats. Jon could have ended it in a heartbeat. One sweep of fire, a few more breaths, and the lions would have been ash. He could not do it. He could not make his throat shape the words that would urge Rhaegal to breathe deeper, to burn hotter. His hands shook where they clung to the harness. "Enough," he said hoarsely. "Enough. We've done it. Enough." Rhaegal snarled in frustration, but he obeyed. More than anything, he seemed to want to remain in the air, to ride the currents of heat rising from the burning thatch. Jon patted his neck, fingers slipping in sweat and soot. They wheeled above the village as the fight below resolved itself into a series of brutal, short-lived struggles. A Lannister tried to flee on foot, only to be run down by a mounted Umberman. Another dropped his sword and fell to his knees, hands raised, only to be blinded by fear as shadow and flame passed overhead. When it was over, the villagers stood in clumps, staring up. Some eyes shone with something like hope, or at least relief. Others held only fear, and that cut Jon more deeply than any blade. He guided Rhaegal down at the edge of the village, away from the worst of the flames. The dragon landed heavily, claws churning up dirt. Ghost trotted out from the trees to meet them, muzzle stained dark. Robb rode up, his sword red. He flicked it down once to clear it before sheathing. "That will be the talk of every inn from here to Riverrun by nightfall," he said, glancing up at Rhaegal. "The Dragon of the North." Jon slid from the dragon's back, knees threatening to buckle. His head rang with the echo of cries. "They're burned," he said. "Men, horses. I saw." "If you had not burned them," Robb said quietly, "they would have finished their work. More villages, more children." "I know." Knowing did not ease the bile in his throat. "It still feels wrong." Robb looked past him to where the woman still knelt by the body in the mud. Her hands were bloody to the wrist now. The man beneath them, her husband, her brother, had stopped moving. "Nothing about war feels right," Robb said. "But if we must fight, better with teeth than bare hands." A small boy, dirt-streaked and wide-eyed, stepped forward hesitantly. He looked from Robb's sword to Rhaegal's smoking maw, then to Jon. "Sire," he whispered, is that your dragon?" Jon hesitated. The word "sire" sat ill with him. He had never been knighted, but the boy's fear cut through his own doubts. "He's no one's but his own," Jon said, "but he flies with us." The boy stared a moment longer, then dropped to one knee in the mud, head bowed. Others followed, some kneeling, some crossing themselves, some making the old northern sign. Jon did not feel like anyone's lord. He felt like the boy who had crept down to the crypts in the dark and touched what he should not. Yet as the villagers knelt and the northern riders watched, he could see, as clearly as if it were written across the sky, how the tales would grow. He wondered, not for the first time, what his father would have thought. Riverrun lay like a wounded animal at the meeting of the rivers, teeth bared even as blood seeped from its flanks. Jon had seen castles all his life. Winterfell's walls had been the boundary of his childhood world. The squat, ruined towers of Moat Cailin had marked the neck of the realm. Lesser holds dotted the north wherever a lord needed stone between himself and the wind. For all that, Riverrun surprised him. It rose from a spit of land between two rivers, the walls forming a near triangle, each face guarded by water and stone alike. The main gate faced east, protected by a drawbridge tossed up over a broad, swift-flowing moat. Banners hung from the ramparts, blue and red, with the silver leaping trout of House Tully bright even in the failing light. Smoke drifted from the chimneys within. Beyond, the Lannister camp sprawled like a rash. Tents bore the red and gold of Casterly Rock, the snarling lion rampant. Siege engines hunched against the earthworks, catapults and scorpions and ramheads, some scorched from recent use. Fires dotted the hills where men sat, eating and dicing and grumbling, while sentries paced the trenches nearer the walls. Robb Stark, Caitlin Stark, and Jon Snow lay belly down on the crest of a wooded ridge overlooking the scene. Rhaegal crouched behind them in the shelter of the trees, head low, wings furled tight, his scales blending surprisingly well with the mottled greens and browns of the forest. Ghost lay pressed against Jon's hip, nose twitching at every sound. "This is worse than I'd feared," Caitlin said softly, her eyes never leaving the castle. The long ride south had carved new lines into her face, but it had also hardened something in her. Grief sat on her shoulders like a cloak. Beneath it, iron showed through. "They've cut the roads from the north and west. If Uncle Brynden hadn't broken through with his riders, can they hold?" Robb asked. "For a time," Caitlin frowned. "Not forever. Not without relief. Which is why we're here," Theon said from behind them, his voice taking care to stay low. "Good thing we brought a dragon to the siege, isn't it?" Caitlin's jaw tightened. She did not look back at Rhaegal. Jon could feel her discomfort as keenly as if it were his own. "A dragon would as soon burn Riverrun as the Lannisters, if we let it," she said. "Fire is fire. It doesn't care who it devours." "Neither do the lions," Robb said. "The difference is that he inclined his head toward Rhaegal, "listens to us. They do not." "To you," Caitlin corrected. "He listens to Jon Snow, not to you. And Jon Snow is not a Stark." The words should have slid off Jon by now. He had heard their like since he was old enough to know what bastard meant. Still they bit. "He is my brother," Robb said. "He is your father's son," Cailin replied, voice low and sharp. "And his dragon is a Targaryen's beast. You cannot wish such power in our hands and not fear the price will be asked for it." Price? Jon thought of blood on stone, of warmth rising from the crypts, of Lyanna Stark's stone eyes. He said nothing. "We cannot talk the Lannisters into leaving," Robb said. "We cannot trick them away from your father's seat. We can break them or bleed slowly while Riverrun starves." "And your plan?" Cailin asked. "You told me you had one." Robb nodded toward the pattern of campfires below. 2/3 of Jaime Lannister's host is within sight of these walls. The rest he's sent out raiding or holding the fords to the south. He trusts his siege. He thinks your uncle trapped, your father ripe for the plucking. He does not know we are here. Yet, Theon said. Yet, Robb agreed. If we move fast, we can fall on his camp from the trees here and the river there. He traced with a gloved finger. Hit his supply lines, his siege engines, his horses. Cut him off from the ford. With the river at his back and the castle before him, he'll have nowhere to run. Unless he manages to break through the north flank, Cailin said, following his line. Or sends a strong enough force to punch a hole while he retreats. He's no fool. No, Robb said. But he's never faced a dragon. His gaze slid to Jon. Jon felt Rhaegal stir behind him, as if aware he was being discussed. You want me in the sky, Jon said. I want them to think the old tales have come again, Robb replied. I want their hearts to fail them the first time they see him. If we strike at dawn, with mist still on the river, with Rhaegal behind them and our riders in front. He did not finish. He did not need to. Jon could see it painted across the muddy plain. The panic, the breaking of ranks, the sudden, desperate rout. Fire, Cailin said bitterly. Always fire. What would you have us do, mother? Robb asked quietly. Go home? Bend the knee to the boy who murdered father? That is a fire that will burn us slowly, instead of quickly. Caitlin's mouth worked. For a heartbeat, Jon thought she might say yes. That she might urge peace at any cost. That she would rather see her children live under a Lannister's heel than risk them on the throw of a dragon's dice. Instead, she pressed her eyes closed briefly. When she opened them again, there was a strange, flinty acceptance there. If you do this, she said, you win, or you die. There is no middle ground, Robb. Robb nodded once. There was never going to be. Her gaze shifted to Jon. And you, she said, if you must ride that beast, remember that every man you burn had a mother who loved him. Remember that the small folk below these walls never chose this war. Do not let your brother's victory be bought with their bodies. I remember, Jon said. He did not add that remembering made every choice heavier, but no less necessary. Rhaegal shifted, claws kneading the soil, eyes fixed on the camp below. Jon could feel the dragon's hunger. For meat, for flame, for the wild joy of flight, yes, but also for something deeper. For the chance to stretch his power. Or over the earth to prove his dominance. Dragons were made for war. Men had decided that centuries ago, and the beasts had learned their role too well. Dawn then, Robb said. Let the lions wake to their nightmares. The world at dawn felt half-formed, caught between one reality and the next. Mist coiled thick over the rivers, rising from their cold surfaces in long, curling tendrils. It rolled across the plain, swallowing tents and siege engines alike in a soft, muffling blanket. Sounds came strange through it, muted, directionless. A man could stand shouting and hear his own voice as if from a distance. Jon's breath steamed as he tugged the last strap of the harness tight around Rhaegal's chest. His fingers were numb with cold and nerves. Ghost paced in tight circles nearby, growling under his breath, as if he could sense the violence about to unfold. Rhaegal shivered, not from chill but from the strain of holding himself in check. Every line of his body screamed motion. Heat rolled off him in palpable waves, turning the mist to swirling steam where it brushed his scales. "Easy," Jon murmured. "Wait for it." Beyond the trees, the Lannister camp was beginning to stir. The first hints of orange light glimmered through the fog as cooks coaxed their fires back to life. A bell clanged somewhere, dull and distant. Men coughed, cursed, pissed into the mud. On the ridge, Robb Stark sat his horse as still as carved stone, cloak drawn up against the cold. The direwolf banner hung limp in the damp air. At his right hand waited the great Jon, massive and impatient, his riders restless behind him. At his left, Lord Rickard Karstark grimly checked the straps on his son's armor. Caitlin Stark was not there. She watched from Riverrun's walls, if she watched at all. "Remember the plan," Robb said, loud enough for the captains near him to hear. "We hit their center first, cut them from their engines and their wagons. The men at the ford will see the smoke and panic. Jaime Lannister will either try to break through us or flee for the river. Either way, we take him. We end this." "And the dragon?" the great Jon asked, grinning. His teeth stood out in his beard like bone in a thicket. Jon swung up onto Rhaegal's back, hands finding familiar holds in the harness and between the dragon's neck ridges. "We start the panic," he said dryly. Robb's eyes met his. For a moment, they were only two boys at Winterfell again, about to do something foolish in the Godswood. "Don't die," Robb said. "You first," Jon replied. He did not wait for the signal. The timing would be guesswork for everyone in this fog. The dragon gave them an edge no man could calculate. Rhaegal leapt. The mist swallowed them. For a heartbeat Jon could see nothing. The world reduced to gray and the furnace heat beneath him. The rush of air past his ears. Then they broke through the top of the fog into a strange, muffled calm. Above, the sky spread out in a flat sheet of pale blue, streaked pink at the eastern edge where the sun was thinking of rising. Below, the mist lay like a second, softer land, the tops of tents and siege towers poking through like islands. Rhaegal roared, exultant. "Circle," Jon said, steadying his breathing. "Wait until you hear them." He did not have to wait long. The first shouts rose from below as men caught sight of the shadow passing above their half-woken camp. The bell clanged again, more frantically now. Dogs barked, horses screamed. Jon guided Rhaegal lower, skimming the top of the fog. The dragon's wingtips sent little eddies of vapor swirling. Through gaps, Jon glimpsed men rushing in confusion, grabbing for weapons, tripping over guy ropes. A squad of archers formed up near a supply wagon, bows half-strung. "Now," Jon whispered. "Now." He pointed, directing not with words but with intent. Rhaegal banked, then dove. The fog tore apart around them, briefly revealing the camp below in stark detail. A line of scorpions stood half-loaded near the river. Men scrambled at their bases, some pointing up, others too busy hauling ropes to fully register the dragon's presence. Rhaegal opened his jaws. Fire fell from the clouds. It hit the nearest siege engine first, washing over its wooden frame. The dry timber went up like kindling. Flames leapt to the ropes, the baskets of pitch stacked nearby. An instant later, one of the pitch kegs exploded, showering the area in burning droplets. Men ran, shrieking. Some burned. Those who did not turned and fled anyway, panic as contagious as fire. Jon forced himself to look away, to focus. "There!" he shouted over the roar. "The horses, the center. Break them there." Rhaegal wheeled toward the Lannister horse lines. Grooms and squires had been half-harnessing them, seeing to feed and tack, when the dragon burst from the mist. Now they scattered, some cut down by their own terrified mounts. Fire washed the line. Horses bucked and screamed, some breaking free, some collapsing. The neat rows of cavalry that had ringed the camp moments before dissolved into chaos. From the tree line, horns sounded. The northern host poured out of the woods like a flood. Jon glimpsed them through gaps in the fog as Rhaegal climbed for another pass. Robb at their head, sword raised. The great Jon bellowing some wordless roar. Karstark's sons grim-faced and silent. Their horses' hooves churned mud. Their banners streamed. Their voices, when they rose in the old northern war cries, seemed to come from the earth itself. Stark, the wind carried. Winterfell, the king in the north. Rhaegal dove again. This time, Jon kept the dragon's fire higher, sending it across the tops of the Lannister tents, burning canvas and ropes, sowing confusion rather than direct carnage. Panic did more work than slaughter now. He caught a glimpse of a man in gilded armor near the center of the camp. Bright as a coin even in the half-light, golden hair flashing as he turned his horse this way and that, trying to rally men to him. Jaime Lannister. Jon's heart gave a strange lurch. Here was the man who had cut down Aerys Targaryen, the last of the Dragon Kings. Here was the man who had been close enough to Eddard Starr. To mock him, to smile at him across a council table, and who had not lifted a hand to stop the boy king he served from ordering Ned's death. Rhaegal felt Jon's focus. The dragon snarled, angling toward the shining figure below. "No," Jon said sharply. "No, not him. Not like this." He did not know if he spoke out of some half-remembered sense of fairness. Killing a single knight from the sky felt too much like assassination. Or because a colder, more strategic part of him knew Robb would want the Kingslayer alive. Either way, he tugged sharply at the harness and hauled Rhaegal's head up. The dragon hissed in protest but obeyed, fire searing over the camp just beyond Jaime's position instead of directly on it. Below, Jaime wheeled, staring up. For a heartbeat, their gazes met, man to man, dragonrider to dragonslayer. Jon could not read the expression in that upturned face. Fear, perhaps, or fascination. Then the battle swallowed him. The fog was almost gone now, burned away by flame and trampled by men. The morning sun, climbing at last, revealed a scene of utter chaos. Lannister lines that had been formed for siege, not battle, crumpled under the northern charge. Pockets of lions fought stubbornly, grinding down into brutal close combat, but they were isolated, leaderless. Fires burned across the camp, eating tents, wagons, siege engines. On Riverrun's walls, the Tully banners snapped. Tiny figures stood watching, archers, spearmen, nobles in mail. Horns blew from the castle, and the main gate began to creak open. Jon felt something shift around him, not just the battle, but the air, the shape of things. This is what they will remember, some detached part of him thought. Not our names, not our stories. That on this day at Riverrun, the North rode with a dragon in the sky. When the screaming stopped, the crows came. They circled high above the battlefield, black against the pale blue morning. Their harsh calls cut through the settling quiet, already staking claim to the feast below. Rhaegal landed with a heavy thud that sent up little puffs of ash from the scorched ground. Jon slid down his side, boots slipping on a patch of greasy mud that might have been blood and trampled earth in equal measure. His legs shook, whether from exhaustion or aftershock he could not tell. Smoke hung low, stinging his eyes. The plain outside Riverrun was littered with the wreckage of the Lannister camp. Splintered wagons, charred siege engines, fallen tents still smoldering. Bodies lay where they had fallen, some wearing red and gold, others northern gray and green. Horses sprawled with legs at grotesque angles, their mouths stiff and open. Northern soldiers moved among them, some finishing the wounded with practical efficiency, others searching for comrades, still others simply staring in stunned silence at the ruin they had wrought with the help of a creature out of legend. Rhaegal's presence pressed on their senses like a hand. Even without fire spilling from his jaws, he was impossible to ignore. Men glanced at him and then away, as if afraid that meeting those luminous green eyes too long might burn them. Ghost ghosted through the carnage, nose low, weaving between bodies. He paused occasionally to sniff, to nudge a shoulder, to move on. Jon found his pail for comforting, a reminder of Winterfell amidst the stranger's field. Near the broken stumps of the siege engines, a cluster of men stood around a man on his knees. Jaime Lannister did not look much like a legend now. His gilded armor was scratched and scorched, his lion helm gone, golden hair matted with sweat and dirt. Blood dried in a crust along his jaw from a cut at his temple. His wrists were bound cruelly tight behind his back, the rope cutting into the fine leather of his gauntlets. Robb Stark stood before him, sword sheathed but hand close to the hilt. The great Jon loomed at his shoulder like a boulder. Caitlin Stark stood a little behind, her face carved from something harder than stone. Could have run, Jaime was saying, his tone almost conversational. I had my horse, enough men to carve a hole. But where's the sport in that? Besides, someone has to tell your boy king what happens when you let children play at ruling. You thought to add another dead lord to your tally? Robb asked, voice tight. Another father's head on a spike? Jaime shrugged as best he could with his hands bound. If I'd had the chance. Pity for you that you didn't, Theon muttered. Jon joined them just as Jaime's gaze slid past Robb to fix on him. Ah, the Kingslayer said. The dragon boy. Jon stiffened. I am no boy, he said. Oh, everyone is a boy to someone, Jaime replied. Even your dead father, for all his long face and longer honor. He would have gaped like a stable lad if he'd seen you up there. Targaryen tricks in Stark lands. Rhaegal shifted behind Jon, claws gouging furrows in the ash. Smoke puffed from his nostrils, drawn by the scent of sweat and adrenaline. The dragon flies with the wolf, not the lion, Jon said evenly. Remember that. It might keep you from saying something truly stupid. Jaime's mouth twitched at the corner. Is that what you tell yourself at night? That you belong to them? His gaze flicked briefly to Caitlin. Some people never quite see it that way. Caitlin's eyes flashed. You have no right to speak of belonging, she said. You who broke your own vows, who sheared a king down from behind like a coward. Jaime's face shuddered. Believe what you like, he said. I've told that story once too often to men who didn't want to hear it. Whatever you told yourself, you betrayed your king, Robb said. I'll not let father's killer go free because you claim it was for a good cause. For what it's worth, Jaime said, meeting Jon's eye again. I didn't swing the sword that killed Eddard Stark. No, Jon said. You just stood close enough to watch. For a heartbeat, something ugly and hot surged up from his gut. An urge to let Rhaegal loose, to watch the Kingslayer's gilded armor melt and run like wax. He tamped it down, fighting to keep his face still. Robb's hand closed briefly around Jaime's shoulder, fingers digging into the plate. You're worth more alive, he said. You'll ride with us, bound and guarded, until I decide how best to use you. Try to run, and I'll let my brother's dragon make a meal of you. The threat hung in the air. Jaime glanced back at Rhaegal, who had stretched his neck forward, nostrils flaring as he tasted the scent of fear. For the first time, the Kingslayer's composure seemed to crack at the edges. You talk like a king already, he said, voice light but eyes alert. Robb looked at him for a long moment, then turned away. See him chained properly, he told the men at arms. Lord Karstark, choose the men who will guard him. And if any of them gets drunk or careless enough to let him slip, I'll have their heads. Karstark nodded, grim. Caitlin watched as they hauled Jaime to his feet and led him away. Her gaze lingered, following him until he disappeared behind a knot of tents, then shifted to Jon. You spared him, she said. Up there, you could have burned him. I saw how the dragon moved. Jon had not realized she'd been close enough to see that particular moment. He nodded once. He's worth more to Robb alive, Jon said. That's all. That's not all, Caitlin replied. If you meant to be ruthless, you would have done it anyway and left Robb to make use of a corpse. You are not ruthless. Not yet. She looked past him to Rhaegal, then up to the walls of Riverrun, where cheering carried faintly over the water as the Tully garrison realized the siege was broken. The men will forget their fear very quickly, she said. They'll ream. Burr only the victory, the dragon in the sky, the lions burning. They'll make you into a song. Jon Snow, the dragon of the north. Jon grimaced. I don't want songs. Songs have a way of taking men whether they want them or not, she said. Be careful you don't start believing them. Rhaegal lowered his head and nudged Jon's shoulder, sending him staggering a step. The dragon's eyes were bright, demanding. "Hungry. Go," Cailin said, voice softening for the first time. "See to your beast. The rest of us have dead to count." Riverrun's hall smelled of river water and smoke, and men packed too tightly together. It was smaller than Winterfell's great hall, its roof lower, its pillars closer, the stone warmed more by braziers than by hidden springs. Tapestries hung on the walls, worn but rich, woven with scenes of leaping trout and river feasts, of tournaments and harvests. Tonight, they watched a different sort of gathering. The lords of the north and the Riverlands packed the space almost shoulder to shoulder. Some sat at trestle tables, tankards in hand, armor gleaming in the firelight. Others stood in clusters, voices low but urgent, faces flushed. The air buzzed with 100 conversations. At the far end, beneath the joined banners of Tully and Stark, Robb Stark spoke with his mother and Uncle Brynden Blackfish Tully. Lord Hoster Tully, pale and wasted, had been carried in briefly to see that his lands were freed, his enemies routed. He had mumbled thanks and blessings, his voice thick with age and illness, and then been carried out again, leaving his hall to younger hands. Jon lingered near one of the pillars, a cup of watered wine untouched in his hand. Men's gazes slid over him as they argued. "He's done what my own sons could not," the great Jon was booming. "Broke the lion's teeth and took the Kingslayer for a pup. If that doesn't make him a king, I don't know what does." "We have a king," said a lean, hard-eyed lord in fry colors. "The boy in King's Landing is crowned and anointed." "The boy in King's Landing is a bastard, the Karstark snapped. "Not Robert Baratheon's get. Lord Eddard Stark died for saying so, but that doesn't make the words less true." "So we bend the knee to Stannis Baratheon?" one of the Riverland lords asked. "Or Renly? We have too many kings, not too few." "Stannis will demand the dragon as well as our swords," muttered a grim-faced man Jon recognized as Lord Roose Bolton. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Do you think he will let such a tool lie in another man's hand? He worships a fire god," another lord added. "He'll claim the dragon as his god's gift. And if we refuse..." Jon shifted, uncomfortable. This was how men talked when they thought the subject of their talk was not listening or did not matter. "He flies with Robb," Theon said from his corner, cheerfully loud. "You saw it. The dragon answers to him and Jon Snow, not some Baratheon with a red priestess tugging his strings. Let Stannis look to his own island. That bastard and his beast make every man uneasy," one of the lesser river lords muttered. "Look at him, standing there like some shadow in a hall he doesn't belong in. What happens when Robb Stark dies? Who holds the leash then?" A cold weight settled in Jon's gut. He knew other men spoke of him this way. He had simply seldom been close enough to hear it. Ghost rose from beneath the bench where he'd been lying and pressed against Jon's leg. The direwolf's head came up to Jon's hip. His red eyes scanned the hall, unblinking. The effect on the whispers was immediate. Voices dropped, then cut off entirely as men realized the wolf's attention was on them. "Have a care how you speak of my brother," Robb said. The hall quieted further. Jon turned to find him standing there, closer than he had realized. His cloak thrown back, hair still damp from the wash he'd finally taken after battle. Men parted around him without quite admitting they were doing so. "He is not," one man began, then faltered under Robb's gaze. "My father named him son," Robb said. "I name him brother. Any man who doubts his loyalty doubts mine. And if you think dragging his birth into it will win you favor, think again. Bastard or trueborn, Jon Snow has done more for this cause than most men here." The words hit Jon like a fist. He had not known Robb had it in him to speak so bluntly, so publicly. Warmth flared in his chest, chased quickly by something that felt too much like shame. Roose Bolton's pale eyes narrowed, calculating. Lord Karstark's expression eased by a fraction, though his jaw remained clenched. "We all saw what the dragon did," the great Jon rumbled. "We'd be fools not to respect the man who rides him. And fear him," Lord Roose said softly. Respect and fear tread close together. Then learn to walk the line, Robb said. You're Northerners. You've been doing it with winter all your lives. He looked then to his uncle and mother. You said they were clamoring, he said, for answers, for a path. Perhaps it's time they chose one. Caitlin's fingers tightened briefly on Brynden Tully's arm. Uncle Bryndon's mouth twitched. Whether with approval or worry, Jon could not tell. You are your father's son, the Blackfish said. He never liked leaving decisions to stew too long either. Very well. Speak to them. Robb stepped forward, onto the low dais before the high seat. The murmuring in the hall swelled, then hushed as if a hand had pressed down on it. My lords, Robb said. The word carried. Men turned, focusing on him. In that moment, Jon saw the boy from Winterfell fall away entirely. My lords, Robb said again. We came here for justice. We came because the Lannisters murdered my father, stole my sister, and sought to trample the North and the Riverlands under their heels. We burned their siege, broke their host, took their Kingslayer. That was the first step. Now we must decide the second. He let his gaze sweep the room, taking in the array of banners and faces. The Lions and Kings Landing say Joffrey Baratheon is king, he said. We know better. We know his claim is built on lies and incest and murder. We could bend the knee to him anyway, let him keep his false crown, and beg for his favor. We could bend the knee to Stannis Baratheon, or to Renly, or to whoever else puts metal on his head and calls himself Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. Perhaps they would be just, perhaps not. But in every case, we would be asking men who know nothing of our lands, our ways, or our hearts to decide our fates. His hand brushed the direwolf clasp at his shoulder. The North remembers, he said. We remember what it was to be kings in our own right. We remember Torrhen Stark, who bent the knee to Aegon Targaryen to save his people from Dragonfire. He did what he had to do, but Aegon's dragons are gone. We have our own now. A murmur went through the hall at that. Men's eyes flicked to Jon, then away, as if looking too long might draw the dragon's gaze. Why then, Robb said, voice growing stronger, should we ask any man for permission to defend what is ours, to rule our own in our own way? For a heartbeat after the great Jon knelt, the hall held its breath. Then Rickard Karstark went down beside him, his scabbard clacking against the flagstones. His long, weathered face was as grim as ever, but his voice rang clear. The king in the north, he said. One of the mountain clan chieftains followed, then a Manderly sworn sword, then a tall young lord from House Glover. It spread like fire through dry grass. Chairs scraped, tankards toppled. Steel rasped as swords came free of sheaths to turn their points down. The king in the north, they shouted. Men from the Riverlands hesitated. Their loyalties were tangled, their memories full of other kings, Targaryens, Baratheons, Harren the Black in the older tales. Yet their lands had burned under Lannister hooves. Their people starved and raped and hanged from trees. Riverrun's walls had shaded their fear. One by one, they too went to their knees. The king in the north and the trident. A Mallister lord cried, "The king in the north." It rose, layer on layer, until the words became a roar. Robb stood at the center of it all, the noise beating against him like waves against a rock. His eyes were wide, his breath coming a little too quickly. Jon, watching, recognized the look, shock and awe and a dawning sense of weight. Caitlin Stark watched with an expression like a woman seeing a child walk into a storm. Pride shone there, fierce and painful, but fear knotted through it like dark thread. Brynden Tully's mouth was a thin line. Only a handful of men remained standing. Lord Roose Bolton was one of them, his eyes hooded, pale face unreadable. A Fry cousin lingered as well, his mealy features pinched. They exchanged a glance. Then Roose went smoothly to one knee, bowing his head. "The North will follow where the Starks lead," he said softly. "Always has." The Fry, seeing his last excuse dissolve, knelt as well. Jon Snow stood, unknelt, at the edge of it all. It did not feel like his place to kneel. Robb was his brother. He had followed him from Winterfell without hesitation. He would follow him into worse yet. But he was no lord, no bannerman. His fealty had always been a knotty thing, bound up in love and resentment, ingratitude and the constant ache of being half inside a family and half outside it. Ghost stood at his side, hackles half raised as if the roar of men's voices pricked his instincts. The direwolf's gaze shot occasionally toward the tall, narrow windows high up on the hall's walls. Jon heard it a moment later, the faint rush of wings. Rhaegal's shadow swept across the hall, a dark smear that passed over tapestries and stone alike as the dragons circled the castle outside. A low, distant roar answered the cries of King in the north, as if in acknowledgement. The men below did not see the shadow, most of them. They looked to Robb, to the banners, to each other. But some did glance up, eyes going wide. Tales would grow fast from that small seed. Robb lifted his hand. Silence fell, or at least quiet enough for his words to carry. "I did not come south to seek a crown," he said. His voice shook, just a little at the edges. "I came to avenge my father and free my kin. If you would call me king, know what you ask. Know that I will have to demand of you everything. Your swords, your sons, your harvests. Winter is still coming, whatever else we face." "We know," the great Jon said, grinning through his beard. "We've lived through winters before, boy. We'll live through this one with you. We need a king who knows our names," a man from House Blackwood called. "Not some Southron stag or lion. We need a king who knows dragons," someone added, earning a ripple of rough laughter. Robb's gaze flicked to Jon, just for a heartbeat, then back. "Then I will be your king," he said. "Not just in the north, but wherever you stand with me against those who would make slaves of us. I swear to you on the memory of my father, on the old gods and the new, that I will not use your oaths lightly." "We swear it too," came the answer, voices overlapping. "The king in the north." The roar rose again. Men pounded their sword hilts against the floor and tables, making the very stones vibrate. Jon watched it all with an odd, dislocated feeling, as if he were standing just outside his own life, looking in. He had wanted belonging once. He had dreamed of being a Stark in more than name. Now, as the hall acclaimed his brother king and the shadow of his dragon cut across the banners, he understood that whatever belonging he had would never be simple. "Go," a voice said at his shoulder. He turned to find Cailin beside him. When had she moved down from the dais? He hadn't seen. "He'll come down when he can breathe," she said, nodding toward Robb. "When he does, he'll climb the walls to seek some air above all this noise. Meet him there. He'll need someone who knew him before they started calling him, Your Grace." Jon swallowed. "Lady Cailin, I still don't trust that beast of yours," she said. "I still don't know what you being here will mean for my sons. But you spare when you can. You burn when you must. Remember that, and keep Robb alive." "I'll try," Jon said. She huffed something that might have been a laugh if there hadn't been so much pain in it. "Everyone keeps saying that. Go." The night wind off the rivers was cold and clean, clearing the last of the hall's smoke from Jon's lungs. Riverrun's battlements were quieter than the hall below. The shouts of King in the north still seemed to echo faintly in the stone. But up here the dominant sounds were the rush of water and the occasional muttered challenge of a sentry exchanging the watch. Robb Stark stood alone at the parapet, his cloak loosened, the wolf clasp glinting in the torchlight. He did not turn immediately when Jon approached. His hands were braced on the rough stone, knuckles white. "It's a heavy word," Robb said without preamble. "King." Jon joined him, resting his forearms on the parapet, looking out. The last embers of the Lannister campfires glowed faintly on the far bank. Beyond them, the land faded into darkness. "It sounded like they'd wanted to say it for some time," Jon said. "They just needed someone to start." "I wanted to say no," Robb admitted. "To tell them I was just my father's son, nothing more. That I was no dragon lord, no conqueror. But looking at them, at what they expect, what they need," he broke off, shaking his head. "What do you want?" Jon asked quietly. Robb laughed, short and humorless. "To wake up back at Winterfell before any of this began. To be arguing with you over who gets first choice of the bacon at breakfast." "I'd win," Jon said. "You know I would." "Liar," Robb said, but some warmth crept into his voice. It faded almost at once. "Failing that, I want to keep them alive. As many of them as I can. That's what Father would have wanted." He finally turned to look at Jon fully. "You saw them in the hall." "I did. They see the dragon as mine as much as yours," Robb said. "A tool of our house. They think that makes us unstoppable. Or they fear it will make us monsters. Maybe both." "They're not wrong," Jon said. "About the fear. About the tool." Robb's gaze flicked past him to where Rhaegal perched, claws sunk into the parapet stone. The dragon's eyes gleamed in the torchlight, pupils wide in the dark. He looked almost content, for once. Belly full, wings dry, the wind bringing him all manner of new scents. "You spared Jaime Lannister," Robb said. "From the sky. I thought you'd want him alive," Jon said. "I do," Robb agreed. "I'll need him in any bargain for Sansa and Arya." His throat worked on their names. "But that wasn't why you held back." "Perhaps not," Jon said. "Perhaps I just didn't want my first king burned like an ant. If you're going to kill a man like that, it should be with a sword in your hand, not from a distance he can't reach you." "Father would have said the same," Robb murmured. Wind tugged at their hair. Ghost yawned, showing a flash of sharp teeth, then settled more heavily at Jon's feet. Rhaegal shifted his weight, stone grating under his claws. "They're going to expect you to use him more," Robb said, "now that they've seen what he can do. Every battle, every raid, they'll look at you and think, why send men when we can send fire?" "I know," Jon said. "Can you do it?" Robb asked. "Can you burn when I ask you to? Knowing what it costs, knowing what happens to the people below." Jon thought of the village, of the men in red cloaks running like startled deer under a rain of fire, of the way their silhouettes had looked in the flames, of the boy who had asked if the dragon was his. "Yes," he said after a moment, "when it's needed, and not when it's not." "That's a fine line," Robb said. "I walk it every time I look at him," Jon answered. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the river. "You know," Robb said eventually, "if Father had lived, if none of this had happened, you'd be at the wall now, wearing black, freezing your arse off." "I know," Jon said. The thought felt like a dream half-remembered, distant and strange. "Sometimes I still feel as if I should be there, that this is all some other bastard's story." Robb huffed. "The wall will have to wait. Kings need brothers. And dragon riders." "I'm not a knight," Jon said. "Or a lord. I'm just—" "Jon," Robb said. "That's enough." He hesitated, then reached out and gripped Jon's shoulder, fingers strong, the weight of the gesture heavier than any crown. "Whatever happens next," Robb said, "thank you for being here, for this." He waved a hand vaguely at Rhaegal. "I'm less afraid with you beside me." "I'm more afraid," Jon said honestly. "But I'll stay." Robb smiled, faint and tired. "Good. Otherwise I'd have to send the dragon to drag you back." Rhaegal rumbled as if in amused agreement. Jon did not sleep that night. Once Robb had gone back down into the castle, summoned by messengers and duties and the endless, clinging obligations that came with a crown. Jon remained on the wall a little longer, feeling the stones beneath his hands, the wind in his hair, the deep, slow breath of the dragon beside him. The urge gnawed at him, as insistent as hunger. "Once more," he murmured, turning to Rhaegal, "before the world gets too loud again." Rhaegal blinked, then lowered his head, as if offering his neck. The harness chafed, but Jon was grateful for it as he hauled himself up. His muscles ached. He'd spent too long that day clinging and bracing. Still, when he settled into place between the ridges of bone, a fierce, almost guilty relief washed through him. "Up," he said. They went. The air was colder at night, cutting. It burned his lungs in a clean, painful way. Below, Riverrun fell away in a scatter of tiny golden lights. The torches on the walls, the campfires in the fields, the glow from the hall's long windows. The rivers, black by day, became ribbons of molten silver, glinting where the moon caught them. From this height, the scars of the battle were less visible. The churned mud, the patches of burned ground, the torn tents, all sank into darkness. It would be easy to pretend nothing terrible had happened there. Easy to see only the beauty of the land. The slow curve of the river, the soft rise of the hills, the way the night folded itself around the castle like a cloak. Rhaegal's wing beats slowed as they reached an easier altitude. He glided, letting the currents carry him. Jon loosened his grip a fraction, trusting the dragon's balance. The world muted, the shouts and clamor of the day gone, replaced by the whisper of air past scales, the distant hoot of some hunting bird, the soft creak of leather. He looked north. He could not see the wall from here, of course. It lay far beyond the horizon, a cold line separating known from unknown. But he knew where it was in the way a man knows the location of a scar on his own body. Somewhere out there, the Night's Watch still stood its vigil without him. Men in black paced along ice ramparts, eyes scanning for wildling fires and pale, cold shapes in the trees. Uncle Benjen's fate remained a question mark hanging off the edge of the world. Jon had always thought he would stand there with them, that his life's shape would be a high, narrow one, stone and wind and duty. Now he rode a dragon above a southern castle, his brother newly made king below, his own place in the story a tangled knot. "Was this what you wanted?" he asked the empty sky. "Father? Lyanna Stark? Whoever left those eggs beneath her feet?" The wind gave him no answer. Neither did the gods, old or new. Rhaegal's body radiated heat, anchoring him in the moment. When Jon closed his eyes briefly, he could almost imagine that the warmth came from another source, from a hall's great hearth, from the hot springs under Winterfell, from a family gathered close in winter. He opened them again. "Your power," he said softly, laying a hand flat against Rhaegal's neck. "Power men will kill for, plot over, fight to control. You're going to make everything harder than it already was." Rhaegal huffed, a small, amused-sounding puff that sent a curl of steam out into the cold air. Jon laughed despite himself, the sound lost to the wind. "We'll have to find a way," he said. "You, me, Robb, the North, all of us, to carry this and not break under it." Below, faint but unmistakable, he heard a snatch of song rise from one of the campfires. Someone had already found a tune for the events of the day. Words floated up: dragon in the north sky, wolf on the ground, before the breeze tore them apart. "Gods," Jon muttered. "Already." Rhaegal banked then, circling once more above the castle before turning back toward the walls. Jon let his body move with the dragons, trusting in their shared balance. As they descended, the lights of Riverrun grew larger, more distinct. The hall's windows glowed, a promise of warmth. The river's silver stretched away, leading toward the sea and the wider world. Jon thought of Robb, alone in a crowd, wearing a crown whether he liked it or not. He thought of Cailin's warning, of Roose Bolton's cold eyes, of Jaime Lannister's bitter smile. He thought of Sansa and Arya, still in the lion's jaws. He thought of the north, of the hard, clean air of home, of winter pressing down over all of them, indifferent to kingships and dragons and southern wars, power and duty, fire and ice. As Rhaegal's claws touched stone and Jon swung down to the battlement, he understood with sudden, startling clarity that there would be no road back to the life he'd once imagined. There was only forward, into whatever storm awaited. Ghost emerged from the shadows to meet him, pressing his cold nose into Jon's hand. Jon sank his fingers into the direwolf's fur with one hand, the other resting on Rhaegal's warm flank. "Come on, then," he said to them both. "The king in the north will be looking for us in the morning. For now, in this brief slice of quiet between battles, He let himself stand between wolf and dragon and breathe the river night, memorizing the feel of it. The sky stretched above, vast and indifferent. The world turned, and somewhere beyond the curve of it, in the land of ice and ghosts, another storm was gathering unseen for now.